It's my pleasure to invite the president of ACSPN, Professor Lai Osho, to formally welcome us and give his opening remarks. Dr. Lai Osho is a professor of mass communication at the School of Communication, Lagos State University, Lagos, Nigeria. He was the dean of the school between 2011 and 2015. Prof, you have 2 minutes, please. And just to quickly emphasize, I'll be sticking to time and I'll cut off anybody who goes beyond their scheduled time. Prof, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the association, the Association of Communication Scholars and Professionals of Nigeria, I want to welcome all our partners, UNESCO, APCON, and the others, and all our members and other participating from all over the world to this 7th conference. The conference is coming up at a time when some of the gains of democracy that we've had in the last few decades are being rolled back due to certain challenges that we are facing in many African countries. You know, economic challenges, challenges of banditry, insurgency, and all that. And we have seen a very good example recently in Mali, where the military again came back to power by, removing a democratically elected regime. So we are having these problems in Africa, but the danger to us is that it seems we are attacking the manifestations of the problem without really looking at the deep root, the fundamental causes of the issues, that we are confronting. For instance, there's a lot of emphasis and concern about hate speech, but we believe, and I believe too, that hate speech is a manifestation of the social and historical conditions that we find on the African continent. So this conference is coming at a particular time when we need to do a lot to really unravel those social and historical, economic and political roots of our problem, when we need to really equip our people with the kind of information and knowledge that will make them to intervene creatively and actively in the democratic process so that Africa can move forward like the rest of the world. We need that knowledge, we need that kind of information that can further, push back the forces of progression and all that. So this conference is coming at a very particular time when we need to rejuvenate our media and communication, institutions. The economic crisis that we are facing has really affected the capacity of our media institutions to really perform their democratic role. It's like we are having a lot of problems, a lot of democratic deficits on the part of the media. So I want to welcome you, and I hope that between today and tomorrow, we'll be able to look at some of these fundamental problems, look at the issues that severely threaten our understanding, our imagination in terms of our nationhood, in terms of national identity, because these are real problems in many African countries. The crisis of nationhood, which has been pushing us, in different directions, that you have so many citizens of many African countries that are not too sure of their citizenship, that are not too sure of their national identity, and therefore they tend to run back into their primordial enclaves, which is not in the interest of national development. So once again, I want to welcome you, and I wish every one of us the best of the next 2 days as we hold this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Hello.
Thank you, Prof. I'd like to call on Professor Lanre Aino, IFAP Chair Nigeria and Chief Executive Officer of the National Library of Nigeria, if he's I'm not sure I can't see everybody, but if Professor Aino he has 2 minutes to give his goodwill message. Do we have Professor Aino of the National Library of Nigeria online? If not, we'll go to Mr. Alistair Shoyo, the founder of NTV. Okay, can we go ahead to get the goodwill message of Mr. Alistair Shoyo, the founder of NTV London?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. We're more or less talking about the impact of globalization and on the African continent as a whole. For me, globalization has been redefined based on what we have seen coming out from COVID-19. There is no doubt that the new media has been used strongly by this advanced nation to promote their own cause and their own interests. Based on that, when we talk about the nation, we're talking about individual nation, while Africa is actually a continent. We have to ask what we want to achieve through this method. Now, for me, this event should bring the aspect of our own identity out to the global community. I have watched and noted the increase of national identity, nationhood dominated by other public perception, and through the use of media to develop their own understanding, identity, and nationalism. Africa needs to create her own path and her own story using the media and this communication method. It's something that we have seen on the African continent that we do not have one strategic system or strategy that we want to market our own people and our own resources to the outside world. I think what we're seeing now today based on this COVID-19 is that we must have a strategy whereby we market and empower our own people. We have been talking about democracy just like the professor mentioned, but indeed, when you look at it deeper, we have not been able to empower our own people to be the beholder and holders of the natural justice that need to be on the African continent. Finally, for me, this conference really should achieve, or if this conference is able to achieve greater height, to fashion out a method of empowering media professionals across Nigeria, across Africa, and the Black race in order for them to make a serious representation of our own people. There is no doubt by the role of the media and the communication strategy that we can adopt at home on the African continent would empower our people to begin to hold our leaders accountable. Without that, definitely we will continue to lag behind where we are. And I believe finally as well that we need to employ method of using our diverse culture, more than 1,000 different cultures and languages on the African continent give us the opportunity to unite. But again, you have to ask the question, what is the unitary point that brings all Africans together? Is it based on good governance or is it based on leadership? Again, the role of the media, the role of this event is very key and strategic, especially post-COVID-19. What are we going to do as Africa? What are we selling to the world that unite us? Is it the African Development Bank that we have seen that actually brought all Africans together to talk on one aspect, or is it our natural resources that we have other people? Finally, as we are all here together, I look forward to having a wonderful conversation in the next coming days. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Asante sana. Edupe modupe na go de se anjama. Merci aussi. Au revoir.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm back. Professor Aino is back.
Yeah, we'll have you now, Prof.
Professor Aino of National Library of Nigeria is back.
Okay.
Professor Shobowale is there.
Yeah. Can we just listen in so that we follow the process? Professor Aino, we can have you for 2 minutes to give your goodwill remark.
Because he has called somebody else.
Professor Aino, can we? If not, then we can have Professor Shobowale, Chair of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And you are welcome to this conference. My hope is that in these 2 days, we will have a very fruitful deliberations. And at the end, we have achieved much more than we expected. I don't know. Apart from the programs that we have lined out, we also have a book, which is the proceedings from the last conference, the 5th in the series to launch. Am I being heard?
We are hearing you, Prof.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just summarize. We are running very late, and we want to ensure we keep. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So it is. I won't be able to go through what I have jotted down because of time, but I'm making 2 suggestions that the organization begins to think very seriously about setting up 2 committees. One to work on the publication of a pamphlet, but the pamphlet is not the word. I can't remember now what it is. And the other is to work on publication of a journal article to be able to accommodate the work of members of the association in forms other than this series of proceedings from the conferences. So I'm suggesting that the 2 committees would work, and then in the next 1 or 2 years, we'll come up with the publications, and then we'll be able to create opportunities for members to have an outlet for their work. Then I also have the delight in launching the 5th in the series of conference proceedings titled Media Freedom, National Interest, and Governance. I think I would find a way of making the thoughts that I have jotted down available before the end of the conference so that you can see other ideas and thoughts that I have noted down. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. We're really running behind schedule. Quickly, can we have Professor Larry Aino for 1 minute to give his...
okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be at this auspicious occasion. And as chairman of Information for All Program, IFAP. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you, Prof.
We can hear you.
Yes, thank you very much. As chairman of Information for All Program, we are delighted to participate in this workshop. As you all know, our priority areas are information for development, information ethics, information literacy, information preservation, information accessibility, and multilingualism. All these areas are relevant to what we are doing, but we know that with digital literacy, which this conference aims to achieve, we're able to achieve all the things that result in having disinformation, misinformation, hate speech, fake news, and so on and so forth. I wish you a successful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. If we have Mr. Lamin So, officer in charge of UNESCO Multisectoral Regional Office in Abuja, can you please, sir, give us a 1 minute goodwill message?
Hello, good morning, all the participants. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Abdullahi Salifu. I am the Regional Advisor for Higher Education and ICT at UNESCO Regional Office. I stand for the OIC Lamin, okay, who is on leave. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this great international meeting being organized by the Association of Communication Solar of Nigeria in partnership with International for All Program and Advertising Practitioner Council of Nigeria, with the support of UNESCO. Artificial intelligence will transform education in deep education tools, way of learning, access to knowledge, research, and teachers training will experience a new revolution, has declared the Director General of UNESCO, Mrs. Audrey Azoulay, a few months ago. If it is not to endorse any technological determinism, which would assign to the progress of technologies the origin of all changes, it is clear that, on the contrary, we can no longer envisage the evolution of our society without considering the potentiality and the transformation of uses that men and women can develop from the development of AI. Within the framework of our organization and the mission assigned to her, in particular a standard-setting body, a laboratory of ideas, and a clearinghouse for information, UNESCO has already undertaken important initiatives with a view to generating and shed light on debates at the global level on the challenges and opportunities of AI, as well as the need to establish appropriate governance in order to anticipate its perverse effects. Indeed, using its multidisciplinary mandate, UNESCO has been investing for several years now in promoting the development of AI centered on men and women by promoting the establishment of norms, standards to help individuals, peoples, and countries to face the ethical and social implications of AI. Dear ladies and gentlemen, notably, artificial intelligence has an impact on all sectors. It brings about an excellent chance for sustainable development. It constitutes elements of data, algorithm, hardware, connectivity, and storage increase the power of information and communication technology. Today, AI has a unique feature in tackling a broad spectrum of issues in the domain of communication and information, such as a freedom of expression, access to information, media development, and media and information literacy. AI is an opportunity to achieve the United Sustainable Development Goal and to construct knowledge society. At a time when the technology advancement and life are more intertwined, it has become urgent and necessary to figure how to draw on the strong points of this progress and mitigate the potential risks induced by them. It should be ensured that technological development is aligned with human-centered vision, with human rights being respected. It is also the reason why UNESCO engaged in analysis and reflection on AI, including from the basis of mandate to build inclusive society, knowledge society. For UNESCO, this kind of society are based open, free expression, access to information, quality education, and respect of cultural and linguistic diversity. Dear ladies and gentlemen, on today's meeting, one of the UNESCO publications entitled Steer AI and Advanced ICT for Knowledge Society will be launched by my colleague, Mr. Banu Nepain from UNESCO headquarters. In this book, UNESCO gives attention, emphasis to the role of woman-centered values in developing AI. It represents a vision and brings about a discussion on what can be aspired to shape AI role for humanity in today's society. Mr. Nepan will introduce this book in details in the session. Lastly, I would like to congratulate ACSPN, IFAP Nigeria, and EPCON for bringing this meeting today. UNESCO will continue make support effort to build inclusive and equal knowledge society in all the member states. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best for this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We thank UNESCO for its support. We're running about 10 minutes behind schedule, and we'd like to go to the main part of our activities today. And I would like to ask that speakers try and stick to time as much as possible. The first item today is the keynote speech on promoting inclusive democracy through access to information and knowledge society, and it's going to be given by Ms. Dorothy Gordon, Chair of the UNESCO Information for All program. Dorothy Gordon is the current chair of the UNESCO Information for All program. She's a global leader in the field of technology and development with special focus on Africa. She works around greater engagement and action on policy implementation and evaluation issues relating to the impact of technology on society. She is a Pan-Africanist and a feminist. In addition to consulting, she mentors, volunteers, and serves on governing board with several local and global initiatives working to define a better technology-enabled future. She's a strong advocate of the ROAM principles and open source technology. Madam Gordon, you have the floor and you have exactly 10 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone who is on this call. I asked for the protocol list, but let me just say to the eminent leadership of all the associations involved with this event, special thank you for the invitation. And it really is a pleasure for me to be back in Nigeria, even though physically I cannot enjoy any Nigeria jollof. So what does IFAP do? And I'm very pleased that our IFAP chair, Dr. Lenry Aina, has already told you a little bit about what IFAP does. But basically, we are set up to engage with governments around policies for inclusive knowledge societies and to promote international reflection and debate on the ethical, legal, and societal challenges for the information society. So I was very pleased with some of the opening remarks, which have given me a bit of a new direction for this talk. I want to talk to you as advertisers. Nobody understands the new economy and our dependence on data the way that advertisers do. Everything today, clickbait, data analytics, and my friends who are advertisers tell me that at last they are able to tell their clients the exact impact of different advertising products. So you are a perfect group to talk to, because as I speak to you, I am speaking to you as an African, as somebody who grew up partly in Nigeria, and somebody who has grandchildren, and I would like them to understand and enjoy the kind of society that we are building today. Now, one of the things when I was looking through that I found, because I was looking for a good quote from an African, and I think this quote from Wole Soyinka is extremely appropriate. He said, "You do not employ an alcoholic as a security guard in a distillery. neither do you entrust a hyena with even the mere whiff of meat, however rotten. And the big question that I will put on the table today is, who is this hyena that we have entrusted our meat to? So I want you to keep that question in mind. The COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement that were mentioned in the concept paper for this event, are really a reflection of a breakdown of trust between our communities and between different stakeholders. I'm going to assume that you are already very aware of the wonderful solutions that artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies such as the Internet of Things provide to us. They allow us to map a genome in a matter of days, if not hours. But more importantly for the topic of this event, they allow us to engage with citizens so as to better understand their needs and concerns. And if governments want, they can really listen and engage in a truly multi-stakeholder dialogue nationwide in a way that they never could before. And so I'm not going to dwell too much on those positive dimensions because others will speak on them. But I want you to think about who owns those platforms that are being used for that kind of engagement. Who owns those platforms? Were they built locally, or are we dependent on foreign technology? And somebody was talking about hate speech in the beginning of this session. And I want to remind you that everything shows, yes, there are people who will naturally engage in hate speech, but we also know from what we call the weaponization of algorithms, that the way platforms are designed, they are designed in such a way that they actually try and modify our behavior. And they modify our behavior by picking up all the data on the things that we are interested in and constantly pointing us to similar kinds of content. And so as one of the journalists said at the recent RightsCon conference, and I encourage you to go to YouTube and get the playlist of that conference. She said, we start like this. This is where we are. No, sorry, it's the reverse. We start like this. Maybe, let's say on this side, I have a man who really doesn't trust women and have a woman who doesn't trust men. And slowly, by the algorithm, the man will be pushed towards groups of men with similar views. He will no longer hear the female view. And the same thing applies for women. And we see this, and I'm using this because we are all men and women, and it's not as sensitive as to talk about ethnicity, to talk about religion, and to talk about all those very tricky issues that come out in hate speech and disinformation. So this weaponization of algorithms results in an increasingly polarized society. And the reason that people do this is because it makes them money. And as advertisers, you understand that being able to predict the behavior of individuals allows you to know what products you want to sell to them. And so there's a very famous person who speaks a lot on this. Her name is Shoshana Zuboff, and she talks about it with the term surveillance capitalism. And I'm sure many of you are already familiar with that term. And she, in her words, she says, surveillance capitalism starts with an audacious unexpected, and startling dark discovery that private human experience, what we do in our own lives and our behavior, can be taken without our knowledge. And then using a variety of tools, including predictive analytics, we are able to modify people's behavior so that that teenager who really wasn't very concerned about many of those issues that maybe a gang is involved with, suddenly sees themselves as only fitting within that extremist community. And so predictions that come out of these kind of the applications of technology, they take away both our agency and our autonomy. And of course, we can call them human futures markets. And the first human futures markets are in advertising. And so I want us to understand that if we are talking about democracy and we are talking about identity, and we realize that so much of our lives are actually virtual in the virtual online space today, we really need to understand who is in control of that space and how it impacts on us. One of the things I always speak about in speeches is the fact that for a very long time, and still in some cases, and I don't know if it is positive or negative, but digital cameras could not pick up black faces. So if I pass somewhere and the camera was on me, it will give some other image because it's not been trained on black faces. And so it's not quite sure whether I'm a robot, whether I'm a dog, whatever. And so of course, it may be good if I'm doing something criminal, they can't trace me, but at the same time, it means they will pull in about 100 of you because they can't be sure which black person it was. And while this is changing, the fact remains that it is a reflection on who built the technology. And we are seeing, even though Nigeria's startup economy is perhaps the most dynamic on the continent, we are not seeing Nigeria at the level of big tech and the platforms that are gathering opinions and shaping our identity and democracy. The Nigerian friends I have are happily giving away their data. They give their data to, I will not mention too many names, but you know what you like using. Let me say WhatsApp. Every Nigerian is on WhatsApp. When I go to LinkedIn, I have never seen as much content on what people are doing as from Nigeria. Nigerians have truly understood LinkedIn. And they are not thinking about the implications of giving away all of that data. Can I find out how many minutes I have? Because I have a lot to say. How many minutes? I can't hear you, you're on mute. 5 minutes?
Okay, 5 minutes.
Okay, great. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about this kind of power play that we are seeing at the geopolitical level. And the fact is that no one knows how to control big tech. It happened very recently, that kind of level of power. And it caught everybody by surprise. And then we realized that given the transboundary nature of these phenomena, we don't have the institutions that can allow us to deal with them. And so there's a whole school of thought which talks about technological colonialism, digital imperialism. And I'll point you to a recent article. In fact, I read it just yesterday, which was about what's in digital colonization. India needs to shatter the technology hegemony of the West. And India is 1.5 billion people. But in just a few years, that is what Africa will look like. We are the richest continent in minerals, in human resources, and in sheer ingenuity. We know that if we put any of those people here, they will not survive the way we can survive. But we are still the underdogs when it comes to digital. And as we are talking about these new forms of colonization, like the way Kwame Nkrumah talked about neocolonialism, I want to remind us that the real problem is to do with mindset. We have to change our mindset in such a way that we can truly own and embrace these technologies. And I just want to remind you, because there's a gentleman called Yochai Benkler. He's a Berkman professor of entrepreneurial legal studies at the Harvard Law School. And he said that in the short to midterm, technology acts as a distinct dimension of power, enabling some actors to extract more or less than their fair share of economic life. In the long term, technology is the site of struggle, whose shape and pattern are a function of power deployed over the institutional and ideological frameworks within which we live our lives. And this is particularly appropriate in this time of COVID, because as we speak about accelerated digitization, we realize that actually we have seen a greater polarization within the society as a result of accelerated digitization. There's something which we call the digital inclusion paradox. And what happens is, as your technology becomes more sophisticated, as your society becomes more sophisticated in terms of technology, you see that the divides are widening. And let me take us back to education. You can see that I'm sure many of the very eminent people around the table today, you were able to give your children bandwidth. But for that hairdresser who was sending her child to the local school, she cannot do that. And I know some of these children, they are so frustrated. They have been sitting at home for 5 months. Maybe it is better in Nigeria, but in many of the countries that I work with, these children have been sitting there for so long. And the estimate is that it's millions and millions of children who have no benefit from education. And I see the moderator is looking at his time.
Yes,
so let me try.
You have one minute, ma'am.
Yes, I want to round up by giving us a few practical things that we can do. First of all, I wanted to tell the association that you must understand data better. I asked if you had a research section. I was told that you don't. And then I asked if you employ any data analysts who will be able to support your membership to understand how this whole data thing is playing out. I think that that is very important at a first and practical level. Then the things that I was talking about today, we need more Africans to understand this. You know, within our universities, I understand some big tech people came in and they said, oh, we'll give you email addresses for free. Just put all your students on it. And many of the vice chancellors just went ahead and opened up their entire student body for free without understanding that they were giving away the new oil. They were giving away that data which will allow people to profile and do things like they did in the 2016 election in Nigeria with Cambridge Analytica, which it seems that the person who paid them, he didn't get the result he wanted. But the fact that they were in the country and even in other African countries doing this kind of thing means that we need to be more aware. We need to develop our skill sets. And then I really want to encourage all of you to promote the active development of our information and our technology ecosystem. so that we have a greater local ownership of the solutions that we use. So he's looking very unhappy with me. So let me end here. And I hope that I will have lots of questions because my aim today was to be as provocative as possible. Thank you.
That's good, very good.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your presentation. I hope we get the full paper soon. You were quite provocative. I'm not sure if we have time for questions because we're really running behind schedule. We'll have to go to the next, maybe we'll get back perhaps later. We need to get to the first session, the media, artificial intelligence, nation state, and the future. You have about 40 minutes, but we've already spent about 20 from your time. So, sir, Professor, you have the floor, and we ask that you try and manage the time, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, welcome to this session.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Prof, you can go on, please.
Prof, go
okay,
on,
thank
please.
you. Yeah. Thank you very much once again. Welcome to this first session entitled Artificial Intelligence, Democracy, and the Future of Journalism. Finally, for us, we have distinguished experts who will lead this discussion. And I'm very happy that we have Mr. Alexandra Sayad, National Co-Chairman of UNESCO-led initiative GAPMIL, Mr. Monde Ashibogu, Managing Director, CEO at the Public Media Limited, MS Emerald Ajay, user experience researcher and creator of Global Code Women's Chapter, and Mr. Lushola Mushon, Artificial Intelligence Evangelist, CEO, Works International USA. We expect you to break down this topic for us. And like we have been told, we have limited time of maybe each expert should talk for no more than 8 minutes, so I can have time for questions and answers. I would like to call on Mr. Alexandra Sayad to keep the ball rolling.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm very pleased and honored to be with so eminent intellectuals and researchers here from Africa. I'd like to thank UNESCO and Mr. Chido, Dr. Chido Onuma, for the invitation. When I've been to Abuja once, it was a great time, and the first person I met in Abuja was Dr. Chido. He picked me up in the airport, in Abuja International Airport. And so when I think about Nigeria, my very best friend is Dr. Chido Onuma. I'm very honored to be here with him and with all of you. Actually, I'd like to share a presentation here. How long, what's the time do I have to present? For how long?
You have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, I will do it quick, but I have a presentation here. Oh, I need to be able to share the screen. The host needs to enable me to share the screen. I cannot share my screen here because I'm disabled.
Please, can you help Alexandra with his screen?
I'm going to enable you. I'm going to enable you to be able to share your screen. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Just a few seconds, please.
Thank you very much. So I'm just to start, do not lose time. I'm wearing here 2 hats right now. The first one, I've been elected to be the GAPMIL co-chair for the next 2 years, international co-chairman. GAPMIL is a UNESCO-led initiative on MIL, media and information literacy, with a huge umbrella that gathers a lot of skills. They are really important skills for the students, the youth, the children, to develop these skills nowadays, to have a better living in knowledge society with full of technology and information. And I'm also a director of Zeitgeist, which is which advisory institution here in Brazil. I'm based in Brazil, who deals with MIL, media and information literacy. And my third hat, actually I have one more hat to wear. My third hat I'm a researcher on AI and ethics on the Pontifical Catholic University in Brazil. So I'm bringing some thoughts about those areas here in my speech. I cannot share it still, my screen. But I had sent my presentation before. I think someone has it. If someone wants to present in my place and change the slides, it will be okay for me as well.
Maybe what you can do, Alex, is just to give the high points of your presentation and what issues, yeah, so that we don't lose time.
It's a pity because I have prepared something special for you. But anyway, I will follow my presentation here, and so I'll give you my. So now I can. Sorry, now I can share it. Just a second. Now I can do it. Yeah. I'll be really quick, Shido, I promise. I'll be really fast with it. Can you see? Can you see it?
Yes, we see.
Yeah, we can see it.
Go ahead.
Go on quickly.
The title of my speech is Education for the Future Means Respond to the Present. I'm talking from a Latin America perspective here, though I'm co-chairing an international network. But we used to use this expression, education for the future, but sometimes we do not think what the students need nowadays, with the challenge that, for example, Mrs. Dorothy has addressed to us nowadays. We have challenges with technology, with information, and with education nowadays. If you pay attention on the education for the present, I'm sure we'll be prepared to take care of the future. So we have a lot of challenges already now. When I think about education and MIL, media and information literacy now, and school, I think about this image. Education is this castle in Scotland. It's a very traditional thing, medieval structure. But at the same time, you have the graffiti, which is a nowadays expression of the youth, for example, taking place on the walls. And the image we have of the education is something traditional, need to coexist with our modernity, with our Zeitgeist, which means spirit of the time in German. So how does school and formal education, which it is the castle itself, can embrace the spirit of our time, the spirit of the youth, the graffiti in this time? This image is not comfortable for everyone. Sometimes when I present this image, I ask for the audience, what do they think about it? And they think, oh, it's not very comfortable to me, this graffiti occupying the wall of this castle. But this is how we see education and school nowadays. So I will jump a lot of things here, but the mindset who has changed in the society, and education needs to follow this step, is that we have this model of communication up to the 19th century that has a few data, and we have a few tools to, for example, broadcast a webinar like this. So this is a classic model of communication. Have someone who produce the content and share the content within one audience. This is the broadcast model. So within when the radio started to develop, and we have the first thinkers, intellectuals, thinking how education, the formal education, could react to the communication model. So Freinet and Korshak, for example, are two specialists that start to develop programs with radios back to 1 century ago. Yeah, and thinking about how media and information could be a literacy for that time. But nowadays, when I think about our relation and our model of communication and also education, as Mrs. Dorothy has addressed us, we are within a network of prosumers. Everybody is producing content and receiving content, and with the devices, we are spreading out our world, expressing ourselves. But where is the ethic aspect of this? Where are our data? How do we deal with AI, for example, or artificial intelligence? So now we have this paradox, Gutenberg, Zuckerberg, yeah? Because Gutenberg has created the press. Now we have Zuckerberg who has developed a little bit this model. How to deal with this with education? And the result is this. This is an annual research that shows what's happening in the internet in 1 minute. Every year we have this graphic online available from Ms. Lori Lewis, which is a researcher. So the volume of data and how artificial intelligence is dealing with this is very, it's a warning for us. We need to be aware and create education to respond to this. This is what MIL is all about. So to think about Latin America, just to have a perspective, according to a recent Inter-American Bank of Development research, during the pandemic times, 60% of the teachers are not ready to deal with ICT. 95% of the students are not going to school in Latin America and Caribbean. Digital mentoring by the family or the teachers is a key element for quality in education. For example, within the pandemic time, we have 10 points different within a country for the children who are learning well from those who are not learning anything. Within one country, 10% of different in micro regions. So this is what MIL is all about. So if I had 3 hours to speak about it, I would say MIL is an onion issue. We need to peel it. There are a lot of layers to talk about MIL. I need to address a very small one. So I thought what MIL is all about is a lot of skills according to you. This is a UNESCO definition of MIL. Skills that we need to develop, to be, to analyze, to read, to use media and information, to express ourselves, to become independent learners and critical thinkers. Okay, so GAPMIL, it's a global alliance led initiative by UNESCO that articulating concrete partnerships to drive MIL development impact globally. You can be GAPMIL part among our 700 members, just enrolling yourself in UNESCO website. Okay, there is the GAPMIL hot site within, and you fill in the form and you be part of the Global MIL Week. You can be part of the call for papers. You can run for the GAPMIL Awards, and you be part of a community that articulates and thinks about the importance of MIL. So MIL is an umbrella that accepts all these terms, and artificial intelligence, which is the main issue of this conference, is within what we are saying. I'll jump this. You can find the MIL curriculum for teachers led by UNESCO on the website as well. But I will jump all of this just to address a new chapter, what I think is very important on MIL scenario, which is AI and big data. So when you think about education for the future, look how this expression is not very updated. AI, the first research on AI are dated in 1957, actually. The term AI, the expression AI, if you understand as machine learning, was created in 1959 in Bournemouth, England. Look at this. It's really different, the AI scenario that we face in sci-fi movies or fiction or books. There's nothing to do with that. Nowadays, we deal with AI from websites to the internet to marketing calls to city cameras. Né? We are starting to develop deep learning, which is the back propagation, which is the main developed part of AI. And AI has its ethics impact on our daily use. The blind boxes, sometimes we don't know what AI are doing with our data, how they are crossing information, for example, or triangulating information, we call blind boxes. The bias of the data analysts and engineers who are creating these machines, that's what Dr. Dorothy had addressed to us. The data privacy, we need to deal with this, not only adults, but also kids and youth. And just to have a quick idea what's big data, we have 5,000 satellites in orbit right now spreading data. 5,000 satellites right now. So I'll jump it because I don't want to run out of time, but what I propose to UNESCO, and I think in Paris they are starting to think about it, and how the cities can use the AI to educate its citizens. So we call Mil Cities. It's a chapter that UNESCO is debating. When you see a city, you see a network of people as well. And these layers, how could you develop?
For the other speakers to...
Sorry. So I've cut it in 7 layers of what a Mil City looks like. The layer 3 is building intelligence through big data and impacting the ethics of it. So MIL on Brazilian media, I'm hosting two TV shows in Brazilian media because UNESCO and GAPMIL, we think MIL, it's a lifelong learning process. We are not telling about the impact on our kids, on our youth only. Adults, elderly people need to be MIL educated, need to develop these skills. So a TV show and a YouTube show was a key strategy that I'm doing. Those are my contacts. You can follow me on social media. You can write me an email. You can access my website, and I'm available as a GAPMIL co-chairman to talk. I had a lot of things to talk to you, gentlemen. I'm really honored to be here, but I will not spend more time on this because I know we are running out of time in respect of our other colleagues. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks so much for your intervention. Now, Professor, you know you are moderating this session, so I will just allow you to go ahead and call the next speaker. And also to emphasize time again, people need to stick to 5 minutes so that we can take as many contributions as possible. Professor, can you hear me?
Very much. I think we have to abide by the time limit. So I call on Ms. Ajay to give us a paper. Ms. Ajay.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My internet is not very good here at the moment, so I'm going to keep the video off. I'm really not sharing my screen as well, so
hello? We can hear you.
We hear you.
Go on
Something
quickly.
is shared on the screen that we received from you. Kindly confirm this is your intervention that's displayed on the screen.
Yes, it is, but I'm not sharing it. I'm just going to read it out. I need my internet to stay very good.
Just go on. Just
go ahead, please.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. I'm currently from Ghana. I'm reading this from Ghana. I work as a UX researcher with youth design in Senegal, and I'm a psychology student as well. So currently I'm studying social media and how it causes depression in mostly students and then students who work as well, because I'm a student who works as well. Now, I was going to be talking about what artificial intelligence is and how algorithms work and all these deep learning and stuff, but I think Alexander has done that for me. So thank you, Alexander. So I'll go directly to what I think the media is using AI for. Now, in my opinion, the first people or industry to catch on to the AI buzz were social media companies. So, i.e. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google Almighty. I call it Google Almighty because I think it's doing everything now. Even though it's supposed to be a search engine, it's more of a media company now than a search engine. Now, the old media, newspaper, TV, and radio had a concept, in my opinion, of feeding information based on ground research for their listeners and viewers. For instance, in Ghana, where I come from, there are radio and TV stations, who actually are for particular political parties. Now, they use these stations to push their own agenda. They feed their listeners and supporters what they need to hear and not exactly what the truth is. Now, content on radio and TV have been so manipulated since the dawn of science to push an agenda. Now, the new media on social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, which all started as social platforms, and they use the same approach as before, but thanks to algorithms, they are able to easily discover and target and track their with these analytics, mostly Google Analytics, Facebook Analytics, they can create content to manipulate the targeted users' views and opinions. So instead of factual, balanced news, the media feed news that will get more views, more clicks, more streaming, which in turn generates more money. And as we all know, fake news sell and bad news also sell. So instead of actually selling the news that are factual, right, positive, they tend to sell more negative news. And in my opinion, it's almost as if with the help of AI, the media is being reinforced graphic in mind. Mostly, contents are created on the understanding and knowledge collected based on the behavior of users. So for instance, by selecting a certain demographic for a certain content, algorithms learn to push the same content over and over again to this demographic, which may or would definitely lead to a certain group of people thinking or believing a certain way, no matter how good or bad their views and opinion is. So in 2019, Google upgraded its Gboard keyboard with faster and more reliable AI dictation. Now, this upgrade gave users the opportunity to dictate whether they have connections or not. I mean, internet connection. Some Gboard users have made comments about their keyboard listening to their conversation and showing them ads based on their discussions. This scenario cuts across almost all the other operating systems. So I mean iOS, Android, Microsoft, and all the others. On the flip side, even I'm talking a lot about the bad side of AI recognition, to recognize human faces in 2 or more images. So I was looking for a friend from way back in SHS, and thanks to Facebook face recognition, I was able to find them. So yay, positive. Facebook and Twitter's effort to fight misinformation involves AI by filtering articles based on fact-checking. So I think earlier this year when COVID started, some informations were being spread around which were not true. So with fact checking on Twitter, people got to know that the articles that they were reading, or actually the posts they were reading, weren't right, thanks to Trump. Now, Twitter uses tweet recommendations, making use of AI for recommending tweets on the user's timeline and ensuring that the relevant tweets are catered to them first. Now, even though this is working out from my point of view, it's not really working because sometimes you see recommended tweets that you don't really want. It also uses algorithms to flag and remove accounts that promote extremist groups, opinions, or hateful tweets. This has also have its negative effect on people because anybody can actually say your tweet is promoting extremist groups, but sometimes it's just because they don't like to see what you are tweeting about, especially when it comes to feminist posts on West African Twitter. On the business side, it uses neural networking to display only the most intriguing part of an image for its timeline here in Twitter. Instagram leverages AI to create its search function with its massive database to help users find images related to their favorite activities and experiences. I like this a lot. Now, LinkedIn also uses AI for offering job recommendations, suggesting people for the users to connect with, and for delivering specific posts on the user's feed using job connection recommendations. I think all of us will say that LinkedIn has really helped us find jobs because now they can suggest jobs based on what you've done previously or what you want to do.
And round up.
This as well.
Please try and round up.
Okay. Now, my fears is, as a psychology student, I see how the manipulating images and videos can affect the mental health of individuals. As a young person in Africa, I'm worried about politicians messing with my perceived democracy, i.e. using ad targeting. And as a woman who has been in the tech industry for years, I'm worried algorithms would be used to cut more of people who identify as female from top positions by using targeting algorithms to weed them out before they get to recruiters. I think the future is right, but AI's use or misuse will, in my opinion, be based on measures nations and government agencies take, and also bringing into view stakeholders to put in place and regulate its users by collectively taking into consideration the people who use this platform, who interact with them on a daily basis, and ensuring it's developed in a responsible way to benefit everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I go on, sir?
Professor Aina, could you call the next speaker, please? Who do we have? Is it Mr. Amuson or Mr. Ashibogu?
Yeah, I think we can have Mr. Amuson. Over to you, Mr. Amuson.
Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to be able to be part of this panel today. This is indeed a very crucial time, you know. And as I've been earlier introduced, my name is Olushola Amuson. I'm founder and CEO at CovenWorks USA, and I am an artificial intelligence evangelist of Nigerian origin. Very important to say that. Very quickly, the panel that I am on today, two of my colleagues on this panel have gone on to, you know, give us critical foundation about artificial intelligence. And one of the things I really care about very much is the fact that in any field of human endeavor, the moment you can democratize the knowledge, the better. You won't have people hiding under shadows using it in malicious ways once you can democratize the knowledge. And that's what this is really about. So I'm really excited about talking to different groups of people across industries about artificial intelligence and bringing it home. The first thing I want to start with is that artificial intelligence is not new, at least not as new as many of us think it is. As Alex said earlier, since 1959, when the concept of machine learning was first tried out, scientists have been working really hard, particularly in the field of computer science, on getting people to know about artificial intelligence and researching its applications. Unfortunately, because despite the fact that some advances were made in machine learning in the year 1959, computing power and storage had not already been available to be able to practice most of the things we really wanted to do, like computer vision or image classification, and so on and so forth. Now, in the past decade, with the advent of the big, cloud companies who are able to give us computing power and storage remotely and allow us to be able to analyze millions of and billions of data sets, it's making artificial intelligence get more popular. And all of the figments of our imagination from science fiction is beginning to come to reality. Talk about computer vision, talk about, deep fakes and being able to generate, videos from nothing, or being able to create an actually full humanoid robot, or being able to recommend a movie for somebody on Netflix, or being able to determine what someone is most likely going to buy because of what they've bought before. All of these things are now possible because of huge computing power. And at the risk of repeating what my other colleagues have said, I'm privileged because I'm speaking as the third person. I already heard some of the things that I don't have to repeat again. But all of this is enabled by the cloud. The question we really should ask ourselves is, whose cloud? And for those who might be on this call who are not very much familiar with these terms, and I don't want to assume that everybody is at the same level, this is actually what the cloud is. It's not really in the cloud. It is just a bunch of data centers, computers, stacked together and storing people's data. And not just storing, but also providing computing power to be able to make sense out of that data. Okay, so it really speaks to us as Africans that all of our efforts around artificial intelligence, and I'm a practitioner, and just before this call, I was deploying a computer vision, program that basically should be able to read text from hospital files that have been, documented with paper, but whose cloud am I using to analyze this data? Whose cloud am I using? Do we have our own internet capacity being developed to foster the whole idea of artificial intelligence within our space? So really, there's no cloud. It's just someone else's computer. And we need to be aware that really artificial intelligence is made possible because of data. And that data has to be stored and processed somewhere. Most times not on our personal computers because those are limited in memory, in speed, in compute power. So most times we require to crunch millions and millions of data sets, of rows of data sets, the big data that Alex was talking about the other time. We need some computer somewhere to make that happen. And because we can't build internet capacity on our continent, because we have decided not to build internet capacity on our continent, because it's not a question of whether we can, it's a question of whether we will. We have the minerals, we have the resources, we have the education. It's just willpower from government and from civil society and from private sector organizations that needs to come together to be able to say that we will take charge. I mean, what choice do you leave university dons or vice chancellors, who can't provide, who need email access for their students, but the only companies who are providing it are the big tech companies who want to use the data for their own profiting. But what choice do you leave the vice chancellor if there is no national infrastructure or sub-regional infrastructure to be able to provide that kind of technology infrastructure for the school? So it starts with that. And I'll bring in some of my thoughts on ethics, just so that we would have a really fruitful discussion today when we begin to hear the questions. I believe very strongly that algorithmic bias, and weaponizing AI are a new type of colonization. And I've been speaking across the continent to emphasize that AI represents the last frontier for Africa and Africans. It's a field that from Alex in Brazil to, all of our professors in the United States here to Europe, people are still trying to understand this technology. So it represents a fantastic time for us to be able to step in. China, the United States, everybody's running this race towards making sure they can use artificial intelligence for their own advantage. The question is, where are we going to be? Are we going to be at the consuming end again, just waiting to use Siri and Google Assistant, on our phones? Are we just going to wait for the new application that has been developed that gives no consideration to our skin color or our tribal marks? Or are we going to curate our own data on our own continent using our own cloud? Because it's not the exclusive preserve of a few people. It's something we can create by ourselves, So if we don't take care of algorithmic bias, it's going to take care of us. So a few interesting applications, as my colleague has earlier said, as people in media and journalism, and as people who just care about the information society, we need to know that as of today, not in the future, there are AI applications that can help in generating content. So if you're a content writer with an organization, your job is not so secure, and you need to be aware of this. Tailoring content, optimizing advertisement, mining data for recommendation systems like that of Netflix, cloud, our own cloud for social good, and combating fake news. These are a few applications that already exist today and that we all need to learn something, a thing or two about. And we must ask ourselves, what really will be the work of journalists or content creators in the future? It would really be much about determining what the data source should be and the templates with which it will be presented. There is a chance that today, most of the news you are reading on CNN and BBC and Fox News and even the sports websites are actually being generated by synthesizers who are not humans, but just curating content from different data sources and presenting it with a given template so that the journalists can be more creative and do some other important things with their time. So we need to make our connections, and this is where I end it. We need to make our connections. What is our education offering today in our universities? Are we teaching 1980 computer science? Or are we teaching, 1975 journalism or 1985 mass communication? Are we teaching with the tools that the world is using right now? Are we teaching with the cloud? Journalism needs AI as much as AI needs journalism. I was saying to one of our professors yesterday that, many of the people, there's so much research that has gone on in the industry from a paper standpoint, and there's very little application in the space. Why? Because most people in the world outside of artificial intelligence are not even aware of what is possible. So AI needs journalism, and journalism needs AI so much. So it has to be our data, it has to be our cloud, it has to be our preferences, it has to be our choice. Otherwise, we should be getting ready again to be colonized. I provide a free e-learning course, on learning.amuson.ai if anyone wants to take a look at that. And there are tons of, courses online that I think after this conference, every one of us should develop the right interest to be able to see how this affects our field. We play a game, and I round up with this. We usually play a game in AI circles that can you name any industry that you think artificial intelligence is not going to affect? And there's really no answer to that, because the truth is there is no industry that AI is not going to affect. So even if you're an outsider to this, to IFAP, to UNESCO, and to the groups organizing this conference, and you're just attending, you need to find out exactly how AI is going to impact your industry. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to some interesting questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Can we have the next session? Thank you very much. Mr. Monday Ashibogu, are you available to make your presentation?
Yes, I am. I am available.
Please go ahead in 5 minutes, please. We're running pretty late.
Okay. Thank you. Good day, everyone. afternoon and good evening, depending on where you're joining us. Most of colleagues most of it to speak about, but I will take it from algorithm bias and web. That's been a major challenge for practitioners, particularly for those of us who are engaged in fintech and media business. You will discover that over the time, you find different organizations and governments targeting different demographics across the social media space with speech or fake news, or as the case may be, or a genuine content to influence perception. It's important that we, as practitioners, have an understanding of how AI is deployed. It could be for good. It could be also for all intents and purposes that a state or a corporate organization could deploy. And I'll give a case study of how the telcos operated recently. Yeah, if you recall the case of BlackBerry, that's the Research in Motion company. I'm really sorry, my internet here is very poor. They claim they have a 4G, and with an AI here, we were able to discover there's actually 2.5 working on a GPRS packet. So you have to forgive this break from time to time. Observe what happened between Research in Motion, the makers of BlackBerry, and to kill a connection to Facebook, their connection to other social media platforms, was simply by the deployment of an AI to profile the type of consumers that they had. It could be used for cyberbullying, either by governments, by individuals, or large corporates. But what is important is having a clearer understanding of the deployment of AI. For organizations like media firms, newspapers, broadcast, right now in Nigeria, we're the world is going social, so the media is more of serious business within the social media space. You find all organizations actually having social media handles, dealing with people on Twitter, dealing with people on Pinterest, dealing with people on Facebook. WhatsApp today has become also a very strong and veritable tool for engagement. You will find that the fintechs in Brazil today are also running financial services using AI. For deployment of these services. Now in Lagos, for example, there are companies who are engaged in bills payment, who are also engaged in content distribution, bills, content, algorithm that has been fixed on that particular number, profiles your consumption patterns over time and begins to deploy information across to your numbers. I've been a victim of the negative part of AI deployment. 2 weeks ago, a young chap who had worked in a firm that had access to my data started reading through text messages from my phone and messages across to people, asking them for funds. And when funds and forthcoming from them is to run a blackmail campaign, is taking the police equipped to track the in. So it's relative. in terms Musa has also asked, in whose interest is AI? Is it deployed for national security or espionage, either for corporate or governments? I'll give an instance. We have about 805 money lending online firms in Lagos that are using AI to profile consumers across social media space. And out of these 805, about 70% of them are owned by Chinese. So financial services that the information that they get in, or is it actually espionage, financial espionage, or for some other reasons? They bring out new products and services beyond the micro lending that they've initially said they were offering. The issue of which Amusa said, I would say that with AI, free will has become relative. Once your information is out there, it's dependent on the country's policy or
Professor, I think we need to round off of this presentation. It's having some challenges. Over to you, Professor.
Yeah. So,
hello, Dr. Shido, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I want us to be talking cross-pop. I want Professor to continue.
and we round off, Mr. Mo.
My apologies, the network is very poor here.
Okay, so if you can quickly just in a minute summarize your presentation so we can go ahead, you make it available to us.
Okay, I will make available my presentation.
Thank you very much. Can we call on Mr. Luciana Mosu?
We as Africans and Nigerians.
Monday, if you can hear me, please mute so that we can take the questions. Thank you. Professor please, you can continue. Professor can you hear me?
Hello?
If you can hear me, Professor please, can you go on and take the question and answers, please?
Dr. Shido, I think Professor Inotu seems to be having some internet challenges. Maybe our colleagues here, Yin and Yashat, will be able to do justice to the questions they have collected during the presentation. Yashat, if you are there, can you just quickly have a few questions that we may attend to for the next 10 minutes? Over to you, Yashat, please.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I see a number of questions have been answered already. So if you would do as well to just give a brief so that the whole house can also benefit from these questions you've answered, please. I'm talking to Alexander. I see you've answered some of the questions. If you could just give us a brief on it so that everybody would
yes,
also partake.
sure.
Thank you.
Do you want me to summarize?
Yes, please, just summarize.
Okay. Yes, thank you for all those who addressed me questions. Mainly, I would like to address a gap meal issue first of all. We have here in our call Mr. Wallace Jichung, which is a very good friend of us, and he is the king. Actually, he rules gap meal in Africa. So all the matters concerning to gap meal in Africa, Wallace was elected to be the regional representative of gap meal, and he's here with us, and he is going to make a speech later on. So I will encourage you to talk direct to Wallace, because he has a kind of regional committee as well who is working with him, and I'm sure he's going to be glad to talk to you. And I was mentioning in my presentation, but I need to hurry up, so I couldn't remember this. I apologize, but I'm correcting my behavior right now to present you Mr. Wallace. And look, people ask me about public policies, and there's an important question about how to reduce the gap within access and information in Africa mainly. Actually, the main goal of gap meal is to act within the governments of the countries. When Dr. Chido Onuma organized the Pan-African conference in 2013 in Abuja, where gap meal was generated, we were talking to the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Information of many countries in Africa, not only Nigeria. And we addressed this speech for all the countries where gap meal is, to the Ministry of Education and to the public policies direction. So when you think about a gap between in access of technology and also a gap in access to MIL, we must talk about a coalition that must involve government, but not only. A coalition that can involve researchers, universities, schools, local government, and federal government. This is the way it works better. The first step of it is that we understand that access is not enough right now. To get equality, to get equity, we need to have access, which is very important, but MIL skills as well. Because it's on MIL skills that you can reduce the difference within the access of people. You can put the issue ethics on the access. You can address the issue ethics and digital fluency to the access. And so this is important, that access to technology and information and MIL to curate, to select information, and also to work with ethics online, it's a very important issue to come together. I know access is a big issue, even for Latin America. I just showed the research of Inter-American Development Bank in my presentation. There are a structure issue there that was very responsible for the students that are not learning during the pandemic times. Lack of structure. But look, lack of structure it's so relevant as lack of MIL in teachers and students and parents. We need to deal with information, AI, and technology with responsibility, ethics, digital fluency, and knowing how to select the good information. Sorry, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex. Do we have any comments from Ms. Ajay and Mr. Amoson, please? Let's take those in 2 minutes so that we can go to the next session. Mr. Amoso, do you have any comments in response to the questions asked?
Well, I'm actually addressing some of them because I understand that we're pressed for time. So I feel that it's more effective to respond to some of them on the Q&A. And
okay.
the Q&A are not
fine.
Privately. So anyone who wants to see the benefits of learning can also read through the other people's questions and the answers that we're giving to them. I think that would be more effective.
Perfect. Ms. Ajay, any comment?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing what Amuzan is doing. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name well. I'm trying to answer some of the questions in the Q&A as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go to the discussion 2 in the first session, and it's on flattening the information curve in the digital age. It's to be more.
Comment quickly on one question that I just saw.
Okay.
There's a participant, thank you for your understanding. There's a participant who says that technology is made by the West. I was so happy that somebody was talking about the power of China in the tech space. We now have the US facing China, and we see a lot of tension. So please don't think that technology is created in the West. That is not the case at all. And even if you go to the US, as our colleague who is working there will tell you, most of the people in the top firms are actually Asian.
Thank you very much for that intervention, ma'am. So we'll go to the next session, flattening the misinformation curve in the digital age, to be moderated by Professor Adebayo Fayoyin.
Thank you, Chido. I'm online.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so the theme is flattening the misinformation curve in the digital age. And then we'll be having 4 panelists. I'm not going to read their CV because, of course, they are eminent individuals and stuff like that. But we have Mr. Dapo Olorunyomi, the publisher of Premium Times. We have Mr. Wallace Gichunje from Kenya, the founder and executive director of the Nairobi-based Center for Media and Information Literacy in Kenya. We also have Ms. Mujima Konju, executive director of International Society for Media in Public Health. And we have Professor Emmanuel Ugwembi from the University of North Carolina in the US. If you permit me, I would like Emmanuel to start. I've had a preview of his presentation and he's going to set the context. And after that, we will have Mr. Dapo Olorunyomi, and then followed by Mr. Wallace, and then followed by Moji. Just to make things quite a little bit practical, please don't bother about your presentations because you might be challenged in getting it on. Please just talk to your papers in 5-6 minutes, and then all the papers will be available. Questions will be asked, and you can also start interfacing with the colleagues on the web chat. So over to you, Professor Emmanuel. Emmanuel Ngwambi, you're on. Please unmute your microphone. Okay. Should we then have Mr. Dapo Olorunyomi?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure, sir. Thank you. So I'd like to say good afternoon, good day to all our colleagues. And I really appreciate the process that the moderator had put in place. And since the papers will be shared out, I think it's just important to summarize the basic thrusts and conclusions of my presentation. Being a journalist, I thought it was important to first make the point why the process of fact-checking as a response to what is now generally in rather colloquial renditions called the fake news syndrome One is a very important point that journalists like to believe that what we bring to the table is the notion and the validity of truth. Of all the deliverables that professional journalism will ever be able to adduce to, we claim that the reporting that the coverage that we're offering fundamentally is defined by values of accuracy, values of trying to promote values of accountability and transparency, the insistence to ensure that we provide verification for reporting, for policy, and for data. Now, if you look and then put all that in perspective, then it becomes clear that the greatest challenge that has faced journalism in the past decades, just to put it in a very proximate sense, is really the wrestle with this prized possession that we bring to the table, the idea that we are purveyors of truth. This then is the context to understand the now rapid growing genre within journalism, which, if you like, you can then call the facts checking journalism. So as a problem, as a phenomenon and as a practice, what it attempts to address is that general confusion of the information ecosystem, which thanks to either the politicians, mostly right-wing politicians, or cultural exceptionalists, people who then have turned the certainty of truth in one regard to a very contentious platform. Now, the idea, of course, is then how do we address this whole problem? I think the most interesting work in this area is a work that Claire Wado, who works with First Draft at the Kennedy Center in Harvard, has done with regards to, in fact, a more rigorous taxonomy of that ecosystem of falsehood that we all have to deal with. But let me take 1 second just to address why we have to worry about this in the first place. So it's not out of the vanity for protecting the space of the profession that journalists then have to worry about the attack on truth. It is also because the most important forms of social organizations that we've come to appreciate as a form of living, both in terms of political organization, call it democracy, the whole practice of doing business, national security issues, all these things come into great jeopardy. And 2016 at least brought that to some sense of vivid reality for most people when the largest, well, not the largest, but perhaps technologically the most powerful democracy in the world came under severe attack on account of the questions of falsehood and so on and so forth. But take the ecosystem of that micro-decade. See what happened in Brazil. See what happened in Indonesia. Put together a little bit of what happened in Kenya, and with some sense, what probably happened in Africa. We had some of the largest democracies in the world came under ferocious attack. It became so clear, I think, to the world that although this phenomenon that we generally call fake news or distortion in the whole information corridor it's not new, but the advent, the transition to digital, and of course, just to borrow a theme and thoughts from the last panel, the whole power of algorithms have now become a commanding influence in the both in how we collect information, how we distribute information, and the purpose to which we then make them serve. So the simple summary of all that I said then is that we now live in an age where information disorder is a major theme of the day. It is a process that is not entirely new, but which technology has so weaponized in a way now that it becomes perhaps one of the biggest existential threats to the biggest projects that mankind have to live with, be it democracy building, the whole building of economies, constituting national security programs, or indeed, as we saw both from, the pandemic in Ebola and the current COVID situation. So the information has now become such a toxic site, and you need new warriors to help to battle it. So how do we then respond to this? National governments make the mistake as if this is a problem of journalism itself. And if you look at countries like Nigeria, a whole lot of African governments, they see it as an industry issue, and the industry, in their perception, is the most organized section of the information industry, which is more like the journalistic environment, and then try to advance regulation, try to advance new forms of laws and policies as a way not to expand inside or create zones of more enlightenment, but rather to help constrain further this space. My proposition, hopefully when the paper is available to people, is to show just how very poor these kinds of reasoning is, and of course how ineffective it is, both as a policy response to a very serious problem of the moment, and so forth. But there are a few things that I thought need to be understood. That broadly, you have three categories in operation here. One, of course, is things that you can help correct within the media systems themselves. However, a lot of this, and I think it's very helpful that this is a panel coming just at the tail of the last panel, is what technology companies have now helped to do. And if you see, overwhelmingly, the platforms and the environment for churning out of information disorder now in the world actually are the platforms of technology companies. So that's another category. Then how then do you deal with the fact that once this had been widely distributed to achieve certain goals or whatever purposes, the population, citizens themselves become the purveyors of this whole process. So I'm arguing here that we look at our responses for those from these three cubicles. Look at it from what technology companies will do, and then here we need to start thinking. There's a term that was used, a very elegant term, I believe, by Dorothy in the previous discussion about colonialism of the algorithm. I kind of bend it a little bit here to speak more of some kind of accountability of the algorithm. What do you then do when algorithms have now become, both the mechanisms for collecting information and for distribution of information, which used to be mostly human mediated mechanisms in the past. So that requires policy response. Of course, that requires regulation of a very intelligent kind. And then one will, of course, hope that national governments in particular are finding ways, as indeed countries like India, Indonesia, and increasingly it looks like the United States will have to regulate its tech community. Then secondly, with regards to the media, I use media now for the terrain of journalistic practice. I think, it's time to think of more education. In percentages, if you look at it globally, unfortunately, this is also an area where research is very lean and is just growing. So, but what we have available is clear as an indication that the journalistic media, in the sense of the media that really deals with issues of verification and truth telling, they are just a very micro set of that ecosystem of falsehood and disinformation. The challenge then is, of course, when, if you like to use an inelegant term of the moment, when you now have a herd immunity, when the whole community have absorbed technologies like WhatsApp, Facebook, and so on, now become the biggest purveyors themselves, because of course they are no longer mere consumers of information. They themselves have become virtually producers of information. That becomes a central challenge. And the United Nations systems, UNESCO, and other important bodies that have been looking at this problem have counseled and proposed that we'll continue to use education as a mechanism, as the most important mechanism to address this, and education in a way that also continue to honor and respect the rights of people. That obviously is. With regards to technology companies, I spoke a little bit earlier, is how to bring smart regulations, smart policies, and legislation in a way that helps us to have this. For the community in general, nothing, of course, than education as the best way. I'm sorry, it's a very, it's a long paper, so I hopefully when people get it, they can react with some sense of clarity. And hopefully when we have questions, if there will be, then we can address other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olorunyemi. Please, there are questions that colleagues will be asking, and so you can continue to just respond to them as they come. May I take Professor Nwambi now? He says he's ready, so you don't need to bother about projection. Just as I said to you, talk to your people in 6-7 minutes max.
Thank you very much, Bayo. Let me take this opportunity to thank the distinguished guests in this 7th ACSPN conference for your participation, and above all, the quality of information that you're sharing and that I'm learning from. I also want to take this chance to salute the points that she put forward, and how, again, what she said is discussed in a more pragmatic fashion so far. I want to acknowledge a person who is me, Professor Adebayo, as well as Professor Nosa. I recall those early days when we're trying to put together this association and some of the brainstorming that took place. So this is like a child that's growing, and it's wonderful to know. I want to talk about the mystifying and demystifying of shared information on COVID-19 across cyber-mediated networks, looking at it from the viewpoint of vulnerable populations. And who are these vulnerable populations? To me, they are poor people and groups living in densely populated regions that have limited access to social media gadgets and also have low capacity to access news and information, or even differentiate fake messages from accurate messages. These are also people who depend heavily on their government to get access to resources, not just information resources in general. They are frontline workers, nurses, bus drivers, doctors, administrators, teachers like us. These are the vulnerable populations to me. Now, of course, there's been a lot of talk about the media networks, what they are. I look at them at three levels: at the institutional level, the business level, and the community level. What media networks do at the institutional level? Well, of course, they provide feedback, they identify priorities and opportunities, they establish position issues and approaches, they plan strategies for intervention. At the community level, of course, they build and sustain networks. Information that it would include, again, fake news, photo, gossip, large volumes of information, and sell ideas. They serve as influencers. We've been talking quite a bit about algorithms, and it was mentioned also earlier of some university administrators taking emails for free, which technically is just not free because they sold everything, they sold their soul, so to speak. All right. You would notice, this is also a problem. Someone was talking about the role of journalism out there, and among these vulnerable populations, we have a major challenge, that of packaging and disseminating accurate information. The challenges that are being faced in some of these countries is that information is being mystified simply because those reporting the information have probably not received the type of training that is needed in order to report it accurately. And so if information is misreported, what happens? People get the wrong ideas, take the wrong decisions, and suffer the wrong way. But why is information mystified? Let's talk about fake news, okay? Fake news is intentionally prepared to appeal to preconceived thoughts and ideas in the minds of target consumers. People who prepare fake news believe they are more popular and have accomplished certain things within their community. And so they tend to spread rumors, fake news. People will start rumors to feel superior to the receiver, to get attention or take control of the receiving group. And naturally more interested in spreading rumors or dangerous information than receiving good news. Why? Because they want to be in control and to show that they are adept at sharing rumors. So, so when you see all these types of information spread, receive your own share of it, it is for those reasons. And so I want to now talk about why COVID-19 became new. The whole idea of weaponized algorithms, producing news to predict behavior, the reasons. There was a lot of secrecy by the leaders. Of course, I think the case of the president of the United States reported on quite a bit. There's this whole idea too, from a journalistic standpoint, that rumors, when they hear rumors, they want to dig it out and see what quality of news they can get out of it. But more strategically, COVID-19 became news because Chinese reporter on November 17 started to talk about it. And there's a long list of activities that took place, including the fact that the New York Times reported how it had infected people in Asia and other parts of the world, And of course, those big four, AP, Associated Press, Reuters, United Press International, and other independent news agencies started to report, talk about this in various languages, including Swahili, Portuguese, German, Mandarin, you name it. Then country leaders went on to block their borders and so on and so forth. There is this long history, a long line of activities that took place turning COVID into news. There were a large number of countries, and I have some data here that I put together back in early 20 that showed the United States, Brazil, Russia, the United Kingdom, and Spain. Now notice, these are all so-called superpowers, having the largest number of infected people. Why?
2 minutes left, please.
Okay, for various reasons. Okay, then what next? The lessons learned, since I have just 2 minutes. I would say that COVID has caused there's a greater risk in our dependence on world superpowers for our protection, and the operational meaning of superpower and redefined by the scholars, political leaders, as well as researchers. What do we do next with this whole thing? I would say that we need to promote inclusiveness, global awareness, and this is going to be a pragmatic and theoretical activity involving governments, involving clinical psychologists, pharmacologists, both in Africa and in the West, and we'll have to be able to compare data because as somebody mentioned earlier, because of our skin color, the majority of us, sometimes technology dodges or escapes who we are, and we are left in between, so to speak. All right, what are going to be the implications for journalism in order to report? What I've media organs should raise fake news education and literacy levels, and that established news organizations should collectively take steps to promote journalistic ethics. Journalists should be trained to report health information with accuracy, because of course, we know about gumbo factor, a lot of sometimes in challenging situations get paid to tilt news, which is never good for anybody. They should use reverse engines and fact-checking sites to screen fake news. The reason I keep talking about fake news is because fake news has been quite damaging to our cultures and also to the health of vulnerable populations. I will also recommend from the news consumer level, let me just 10 seconds and I will stop, that news consumer responsibility will include checking dates of stories. We have to have, as news consumers, a responsibility for checking news. We have to be able to question lines that are written in capital letters, question stories that quote other news outlets, especially websites, as their sources. And if there are no links or ways to verify quotes and references, we would say that the news is likely fake and it will not be advisable to share it. Policymakers do have to come up with for reopening the economy, and governments need to set up a crisis intervention team of scientists, healthcare workers, and so on and so forth. Government liaise with international experts through diplomatic channels to compare experiences, share facts about the disease and treatments and so on. And lastly, medical doctors and serologists to seek remedial treatment and eventually find a cure for this disease. Is a country's political, diplomatic, and economic interests. So I want to just thank you. Say Dalo, ese, nagode, gracias, merci.
Thank you very much for that, Professor Gwambi. I will now move to Mr. Wallace Likunje. Just to note that in terms of the taxonomy of misinformation, one of the institutes in the US did a count, and they had over 5,000 plus hoaxes and conspiracy theories around it, and they haven't stopped. Over to you, Mr. Likunje.
Thank you, Debayo, and the chair of the panel. It can be heard?
Yes, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be back to Nigeria. Like Alexandra said, my journey on media and information literacy started in Nigeria, and it seems like I am attached to Nigeria. I took over from Chido as the Africa president for the chapter, GAPMIL chapter. And we have a small team. I saw some questions related to that, which we are going to try and answer. But for the sake of those who don't know, GAPMIL is not a statutory body as such, so it may not really have the muscle to have some of these issues on the ground. But we are trying to see if we can have these kind of partnerships and discussions that take us to the levels we want to reach. Back to the business of today. I didn't have a presentation myself, but I'll talk to my notes. A long time ago, I don't know what time that was, it was said that a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. This shows that misinformation and disinformation has been with us for a long, long time. Dictionary.com actually puts the first recorded incident of disinformation at around 1350 to 1400. In an op-ed that I did with the Kenyan's Business Daily that was published yesterday, I opened that if anyone needed to be convinced that we need to have media and information literacy, at least to combat misinformation and disinformation across the globe and in our society, then the COVID-19 pandemic has given us the most compelling of reasons. This is because we have seen how misinformation, conspiracy theories, and other manufactured information around COVID-19 has made it so difficult for governments across the world to manage the pandemic. So essentially, we are talking about misinformation here, which is probably the harmless way of spreading information, which is false or inaccurate. But I think it has been mentioned by the speakers before me that we also have the most deleterious aspect of misinformation, which is disinformation. That is where people essentially sit down to manufacture information that is wrong and fake, but with an intent to achieve some end. In Kenya, it was also mentioned by someone, I think we had the issue of Cambridge Analytica during the elections of 2017, but also Geopol came in. The first speaker, I think the keynote, she mentioned that most of these interventions are coming from the West, and which is the cause for worry. I think I did not have that kind of outlook before she spoke. So Geopol actually did have some study on the impact of fake news as it was then. We now officially in UNESCO we call it misinformation and disinformation. The impact it had on Kenya, and which is what I want us to discuss today, or rather to put across in the panel. The first one is that misinformation has become a bigger problem than previously thought. I think we have just mentioned that in regard to what is happening around COVID-19. And we have seen the kind of interventions. For example, here in East Africa, there are some countries actually, like our neighbor Tanzania, who thinks that COVID-19 is a fake thing. And they went back to their normal lives. We are not hearing anything about what is happening in terms of the pandemic, while in Kenya, we are still grappling with the effects with the partial opening up of the country. So that is part of it. Then the second one, misinformation pervades the hot topics of the day. Be they the national topics, maybe there could be a national discussion around election time. There could be a global discussion around the pandemic, which has become the topic of the 2020. And since it has pervaded the national discussion, it waters down the quality of that discussion with so many falsehoods. 2020 threatens to become the year of disinformation and misinformation. Thirdly, misinformation has become a scandal. I think it's no longer a scandal, it's actually becoming a disaster, and we can see the kind of effects it can have. If we take it that some of the audiences, for example, are gleefully, it was opened by an editor in one of our newspapers, which has a public editor, some kind of an ombudsman, saying that the public or people who consume a lot of information around social media platforms, for example, and kind of shunning the legacy media, they are kind of gleefully consuming misinformation, which to them, then if the public become comfortable with misinformation, then where do we go as the people who are managing information as journalists and journalism educators, for example? Then the third one is, yes? Yes,
2 minutes to go, please. Thank you.
No, sir. I think I need some more time because the other speakers also spoke for longer. Let's have some democracy. Thank you so much. I'll finish within the 2.5 minutes. Social media is a key platform in the spread of misinformation. As audiences, we have actually kind of targeted social media. And this is now the point I was going to raise. When we start blaming social media, that means that we are encouraging governments to kind of stifle them using legislation and other forms of measurement. For me, my basis has always been that in a democracy, social media is the best possession that a citizen has ever had. So if we go ahead and start blaming social media, then for misinformation, then we are going to invite government interventions, and we are going to dispossess the citizen of a very important tool that technology has given to us for us to be able to actually express ourselves and be able to hold them to account. So essentially as in conclusion, I was going to say that we need to equip our citizens with media and information literacy skills so that they are able to separate fact from fiction and recognize manipulation, hate speech, and other, and also to start and demand accurate information. The corollary is that better media consumption habits should be built for all citizens so that we are able to beat disinformation. Thank you so much. I hope I've finished within the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You are within time. I think there are a couple of comments online, so maybe you just can continue to respond to them. Finally, let's have Mujima Konju to make her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. A very good afternoon, good day, good morning, wherever you are. And I want to thank the organizers, ACSPN, for inviting me, and of course, UNESCO, and for making this a learning curve. I have listened attentively to all my all the resource persons, and know that we all have a commonality, which is concern about fake news. I'm going to be speaking, I have all my life as a journalist, reported health. I advocate for specialization in terms of knowledge management to media practitioners and media houses. That's what I do mainly now, consulting and ensuring that we as media practitioners ourselves are speaking or writing or analyzing from the point of knowledge. Sometimes this knowledge is warped, and what we have is what our concern is about, helping to, as we say, to flatten the curve on misinformation. Before I go on at all, I'd like to share with you, since we are not speaking, to our presentation, that would be, I'm sure, sent to you, but I have even deviated from what I wrote initially, because I think what has come up, listening to everyone here, is what WHO, the World Health Organization, is very concerned about. What's this? Is concerned about infodemics. we had a seminar about 3 weeks back on infodemics as it affects the pandemic COVID-19. And it became imperative that the media has a role to play. I'd like to share with you some of the concerns. You can all, you can get this presentation. I'm sure that our organizers will ensure that you get that. We're looking at what areas does these fake news or infodemics, as it were, filtrate into human behavior change, affecting interventions, not to work or to work. According to WHO, it says infodemics about the pandemic actually kills faster than the pandemic itself, because a lot of theories have come up of how best, particularly in our community, where access to health care facilities or access to health, particularly during the lockdown, was not quite favorable. So people took it upon themselves to just spread all kinds of messages, all kinds of news, all kinds of information. So the pandemic, confounding wave of information, which has been declared as infodemics, has generated what people call as fear of the unknown, speculations, as well as various spectrum of information activities, resulting in billions and billions of information items on the web and other sources. Let me just share with you quickly what a quick use of reputable search engine provided. I chose Google on 1st September. Search. Journalists reports on COVID-19. Result is over 564 million in 0.48 seconds. Journalists reports only on the web globally. You can imagine the mass of information that is going out there. You can read on the screen that's over 70% of these information are overloads, infodemic, info crazy, info whatever you want to give it, and in most cases damaging the undiscerning user. Undiscerning users, which has now resulted in what we are talking about, because a lot of them are ignorant. We have information mass, they do not know how to decipher these. We have fear, we have panic that has resulted into the mental well-being of the generality of our people. So how do we go from here? Digital age crazy information. A lot of the resource persons have spoken to these in terms of where they get the information and all that. Now, how do we synthesize this? Driven by information mass from multiple sources. Truth, scholarly, that we've heard today, publication, news, facts, fictions, lies, untruths, myths, fake news, misinformation, disinformation, all carefully packaged from various sources, social media, web, and word of mouth. And these are the areas that we should actually be concerned, because for us as media practitioners, and I'm going to speak as a health correspondent on the field with over 20 years counted on the field, that these information mismanagement or infodemics, as WHO has recognized, has been more of a damage than what we can think about today. So now, the journalist, the media, now has an important role to play to ensure that this digital age crazy information curve is achieved, to maintain some measure of a circle, because we are dealing with a situation where we have, as a people in Africa, as a people, we are dealing with communicable diseases, non-communicable diseases, with very poor health systems, very poor structure, with human resources that, although trained, but a lot of them had migrated over the years. So we have to design, or we must put in place, things that will make people choose what is best for them. We must have a citizen-driven information management that I believe the journalists can play a big role in this. I can give examples during the heydays of HIV and all the myths surrounding HIV, the media came in and people were able to come out to get tested, and it didn't, the myth surrounding HIV eventually was lost because we had credible information source. Quality of source, I know, is something that we must address, but how can we address this ourselves? A lot of people have spoken about which way to go in terms of what we have today with us. Even the policymakers, some of them have not helped. Information has been so, nobody knows the truth. You cannot decipher the truth from the fake news. Even when you do, people just go on their own, particularly on the social media. I'm not saying social media is bad, but I'm saying that there's so much information out there that we need to be discerning to be able to know what to do. So this is not actually a paper, but listening to everyone here, I would say that why use communicators for the infodemic? Infodemic has become a disease on its own. Fake news has become disease on its own. And quickly, let me share an example with you. I've said this at several fora, so if you've listened to me before, you probably hear me now saying it again. A situation where people just read about, say, listen, if you want to if you are infected, for example, with COVID-19, you don't need to go to any hospital. All you have to do is have plenty of garlic and ginger and the rest of it, have the good mix, and they can swear by anything that it will help. And these information went everywhere, everywhere. If you want to prevent, if you want to treat, this is the way to go. And so how do we, this information flow is so regular, so timely, so unusual, and the volume of which is such that the journalists must be able to help the community to be able to know which is the vital tool for encouraging people to take the available preventive measures to protect and save lives. We remember the case of Oyo State, and Professor Esson would remind me of that at the last conversation we had. Came up and spoke about the kind of food he ate and the kind of medication, which are not scientifically proven, to say that these are the things that helped him, to one of the governors to overcome COVID-19 infection. Well, these went viral and everybody took it. But I'm sure that people have learned the hard way to know that things, the fact that it worked for Mr. A and it's not scientifically proven. So personal opinion of people, personal opinion of offices that, particularly our policymakers, when they speak, we must be able to ask, we must be able to research, help using professionals so that the communicator or the journalist is not at the conduit pipe that will help anybody who wants to be seen or to be heard. So how to help to flatten the curve? Communicate, share facts, truthful information on COVID-19. I'm using the lens of COVID-19. I'm sure we can apply it to other lenses as well. We must be responsible, avoid amplifying the voices of misinformation, fears, confusion, gossip, personal opinions. We must be, I think the media needs to be, themselves to be scientifically minded, or for them to know that you need to dig deeper. Because what we see now, and I'm sure a lot of other resource persons have alluded to it, is that most of media practitioners have become event reporters and not the analytical mind that would, take us to the promised land. So I'm saying a fact checking. I'm also advocating strongly that there must be capacity building within the media. What we have now is, I've shared this with Professor Fayoyin, that this is what is one quest that everyone here, particularly on this platform, and that's why I agreed to come on this platform, that we must develop an in-country capacity building for journalists and the media, so that we trained Thank you very much. I'll soon be over. And we should be socially responsible and be seen as such. Should refrain from sensationalism and not being an alarmist. And I think that what we have here is sometimes, you know, we are too eager to be the first to publish, and so we don't check facts. Facts, facts, facts. I think that's the way to flatten the curve. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be on this very, very important meeting. And Chido, it's good to see you again. And you're staying in the best place my son loves. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think with that, I know we don't have time for any further comments but I'll try to squeeze a little bit. We've heard the power of misinformation and disinformation. We've heard the consequence in terms of how it contributes to risk perception and stuff like that. But we have also identified a couple of points in terms of facts, science-based communication, engagement to ensure that we're able to do it. So on that note, I will say thank you very much to the panelists and then hand over to Chido.
Thank you very much, Professor Fayoin. We'll quickly go to the next discussion number 3, reshaping identities and citizenship in the evolving media landscapes in Africa, and it's to be moderated by Professor Umaru Pate. Prof, you have 30 minutes to take us through this session. Professor Pate. Do we have Professor Pate on?
Hello.
Yes, Professor Pate, you have 30 minutes to take us through this session, please.
Thank you very much. Member panelists are welcome, likewise. Chido, Dr. Chido.
Yes, please, yes.
Can you give me some few minutes? I have challenges with my system here, but let me just, meanwhile, go ahead. Let me join you. Give me 2 minutes.
Okay, I can just...
yes, go ahead, I'll take over.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 4 people on this panel. Please, we're getting this feedback from someone. Can they mute themselves? We have Dr. Charles Ngugi, Associate Director, School of Media and Communications Studies, University of Nairobi in Kenya, Mr. Noel Ihebuzo, International Development and Policy Consultant in Abuja, Dr. Hayes Mabwezara, University of Glasgow, and Professor Abigail Ndisika, British Chevening Scholar at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Let's just go through the discussion, starting with Dr. Ngugi, please. If you're ready, could you have between 5 and 7 minutes to take us through your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
In fact, you could be in the morning, you know, where you are, or evening, but for me, it's afternoon. That's why I'm saying good afternoon. At any rate, you know, let me put my video very briefly, just so that you can see that I'm not really a ghost. But now that you have established that I'm a real life, you know, human being, let me go back to, let me mute my mic and basically say that I'm supposed to make 1 or 2 remarks about how identities and citizenship on the African continent are being shaped by the emergent media landscape. And very quickly, I want to say that you know, we have several concepts to grapple with. The first one is identities, and then citizenship. Identities, of course, particularly collective identities, are, we all agree, socially constructed, while citizenship is a legal bureaucratic identity. And you may recall that after independence, because I'm really focused on the collective identity rather than the personal, what we call personal identity. So with regard to the collective identities, after independence, you may remember that colonial boundaries were honored by independent African countries, and the post-colonial government continued with the establishment of colonial, with the established colonial structures of administration. Basically, the postmodern African identity, nation state identity, the construction of that particular project was premised on those colonial structures that had been established. The founding fathers, regardless of their ethnic provenance, were all agreed that the diverse peoples of individual African states should become one nation. And then, of course, the citizens of different African states, regardless again of whether they were formerly Mamdian subjects or citizens in the colonial regiments, they were all put under the same laws, given the same national identity cards and passports, and invited to elect their leaders, exactly like it is done in culturally homogeneous democratic nations that in the West. The existing mass media, including the state-owned media, were mobilized for the task of nation building. And we brought in concepts like development journalism and development communication from the East to cheer and spur development, and also to countervail the adversarial journalism, which at that time was thought to threaten or that would tear the young nations apart. So fast forward, and we are in 2020, and at the moment, because I don't want to dwell with all that history, but at the moment we in communication used to, you may remember we used to complain about the information imbalance and the dumping and the cultural imperialism. But these terminologies are now seen as old, tired, and irrelevant concepts, and scholars who reference that debate are seen as indulging in uncritical regurgitation of outdated historical notions. So I am not sure whether to call these the end of protest or the moment of total and complete acquiescence. But what is clear is that Africans have been walloped by globalization. Most Africans do not even appear to care anymore. In fact, I'm surprised that people who are assembled here do appear to care. A lot of us delude ourselves that we are giving as much as we are getting in these globalizing interactions. But the fact of the matter is that there is an imbalance, and we are pretty much on the receiving end, and we are almost, I'm sorry to say, hopeless. The journey to where we are in terms of social media is essentially an exemplification of what John Merrill and Ralph Rowenstein called the media progression cycle. And you remember that very well, that the lead phase, the popularization phase, and the specialization phase. So we are now in the specialization phase with these emergent medias, particularly social media, and that it should not surprise anyone that there has been so much audience fragmentation and multiplicity of channels of communication. So in terms of how that is affecting African identities, particularly collective identities, the whole project of nation building, as we know it, right from the time of independence, one can say that there has been a complication or a compounding of that project by the emergence of this new media, social media in particular, in a context of liberal democracy, which again is our new normal since the second liberation, and particularly its emphasis on free expression. Of course, everyone has a right to express themselves, and everyone's freedom of expression, as well as the expression itself, are taken as important and equal. And I think that is where we have a challenge, because when you equalize everybody, this is a very democratic concept, and I know I am almost touching the third rail, but when you equalize every single opinion or form of expression, what do you get? You basically mean that, or you basically end up with a situation where the ordering and the categorizing, need for, which is an innate human need, all that disappears, so that concepts such as maturity, such as age, gender, authority, including state and religious authority, these are all these come under attack. In other words, there is an attack on any form of authority, whether you're talking about elders, village elders, and the so-called African sages. Those people are no longer hold the status that they used to hold, and therefore the denial of this structure and the order and the ability to categorize, in my view, is what is responsible for removing the rug from underneath everyone's feet, with the consequence that we now feel terribly unstable. So what we can say in effect is that before we as Africans can claim the existence of firm, solidified African national identities, and I'm saying this with all due respect because I know multiple identities do exist, but I'm talking about the project of nation formation. What we can see, therefore, is that that process is already thoroughly undermined, and it is most likely not to be able to allow to thrive. So all this is happening, and it's happening because of the challenges, as I said, posed by the social media. I want to refer to just one challenge, because there are many challenges. Just before, as I come to the end of my presentation, I want to say that the first of those challenges is the challenge of increased media space, both numerically and metaphorically. And I want to call this the challenge of media abundance. Too many channels look like a good thing, and they probably are, but given, particularly given our history of state-controlled media monopolies and limited channels. In fact, our past limitations is directly correlated to our fascination with the abundance of channels. So in terms of opportunity, the increase in the number of channels has resulted in increased opportunities to express ourselves. Concomitant to this, or with these increased channels, is a deepening of democratization, resulting in the enjoyment of reflexive speech, political speech, sexual speech, and also commercial speech. So the question for us is whether all this speech is good for us. I know it's a terrible question to ask in a gathering like this one, but then again, I am a journalist. I have lived all my life asking questions, so I'm going to ask this one, even if it's the last question that I ask. in fact, some of that speech is unfit for human consumption. However, at some level, these many channels tend to result in a cacophony of voices, which we hear, but are unable to listen to. You can even, equate it to some kind of background noise or the soundtrack or the soundtrack of postmodern digital life. So we are talking about a plurality of voices, which I don't think we are quite sure what to do with. We are not even prepared in terms of acquisition of democratic language. And therefore, we are there and not there. So these are observations, so they are not really, based on scientific research, but that is how I sort of see things. And I want to end by saying asante sana for inviting me, Fayo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ngugi. Increased opportunities, additional plurality of voices, but the impact is yet to be measured. Perhaps that could summarize your presentation. Now we move on to Professor Noel Ihiebuzo, still talking on reshaping identities and citizenship in the evolving media landscape in Africa. Please, you have the forum, sir.
All right.
Professor Noel.
Yes, please. Thank you. Let me take a leaf from the last speaker and just turn on the video for just a minute to establish that I'm not a ghost, and then I'll turn it off again. Hi. All right. My brief actually to add to the discussion on reshaping identities and citizenships in the brave new world. And I'll be exploring 3 questions essentially. And this have to do with the role of the digital revolution in shaping citizenships and its power to contribute to the emergence of either what I call fake citizenship or false citizenship, or its power again to contribute to what I call the emergence of true identities or twisted identities. My essential point of departure is that citizenship is essential for nation building. The approach I'm going to adopt in this presentation is as follows. I'll examine the emerging and dominant notions of identities and citizenship, then quickly skim through what I call the effective model of citizenship, and then try to suggest a role for the digital revolution in this new scheme of things. Now, moving quickly, because time is very short, what are the features of this, our new world? We live in a world, as all the presenters have said, that is actually characterized by great internet penetration and the new technologies, which this new brave world that allows us so much power, but at the same time also confers on us the powers for information and misinformation. The last speaker talks about a cacophony of voices. I talk about multiple sources and an army of internet users, all with different agendas. Now, in this ensuing diversity and plurality of presentations will emerge issues of truth and trust. And then, of course, the whole issue in media and journalism about source credibility and the receiver credulity. And what is actually disturbing in all of this, what makes it more complex here is that we're increasingly noticing that engagement on this new media is largely toxic and antagonistic. And that in the end, one emerging conclusion is that in spite of their very well-intentioned users, these new technologies, in fact, are becoming enablers of demagogy and rabble-rousing. And this demagogy and rabble-rousing, we have to look at it in the context of emerging populism around the world, where people, leaders now use the media to deceive, to engage, and to create false enemies where there are no enemies, and to create a band of loyal following, unreflecting largely. So the conclusion here is that the new media allow for a deployment of misinformation And if you look at what's happening around the world today, the spewing of conspiracy theories, which most times are at variance with the truth. The new media also create new possibilities for networks. People create gangs, associations, identities that are actually in conflict with the possibility of the emergence of solid citizenship. And then clearly, what we also notice is what I call the rise in constructed narratives and narrow negative depictions of the other, usually involving stereotypes and prejudice. I don't want to mention the American ongoing tussle in America, but that's also very, very tempting. Now, I move on quickly to now say, in all of this, what do we understand by citizenship? And like the other speakers said, it is both civic, it's political, and it is social. It involves rights and obligations. And the thing to note is that citizenship is something that is socially constructed, but is also politically imposed with legal responsibilities. We cannot say the same about identities. Identities are who we are, who we believe we are, and who others believe we are. So these three views are often in conflict, that what we believe we are may be in conflict with popularly held notions of who we are. But then the thing is, identities are created, are context dependent, and framed by circumstances, and are very fluid. My attention was drawn to this lately when I had to fill a form and I was asked sex, male, female, undecided. Now that's a new one. Before it was binary. It was you either male or female. But in this emerging world, there's a third identity, even a fourth identity, which allows for undecided. And if you want to be male in the afternoon or female in the evening, also that new identity allows you that. So this is just to underscore the fluidity of the concept of identity. Now, a good citizen is one that is law-abiding, truth-seeking, patriotic, respectful, and one that is driven by the common good and who demonstrates self-efficacy. Self-efficacy here, I mean somebody who can monitor himself, know when he's going overboard, and take corrective action. Citizenship is about loyalty, about rights, obligations, shared value orientation, which also recognizes the possibility of multiple identities. So a citizen will know that even though his loyalty is to a country, other identities are possible, and that those identities do not necessarily exist to challenge his, but that they can be accommodated within this concept of loyalty to a nation. So now you have a clash between the heterogeneous nature of identities and the homogenizing nature of citizenship. Now, moving on, I just want to observe that social media and the new technologies facilitate the creation of multiple identities. Now, it is also worth noting that the whole concept of citizenship is actually built around communication, voice, and free discourse, and not on coercive discourse. Because coercive discourse does not lead to citizenship. Voicelessness actually recognized, voice is recognized as a key indicator of governance, and free unconstrained discourse opens the door to pluralism, but such a pluralism is predicated on self-monitoring and self-efficacy, and a code of ethics on usage, media use, and social engagement. Active citizenship, therefore, is what matters for a country like Nigeria and for third world economies, not dormant citizenships, which can lead to the emergence of fascism, tyrannies, and autocracies. Now, how do we then move forward with this, our notion that citizenship is legal, is political, but needs to be large enough to accommodate the possibility of multiple identities? We can do this by recognizing the power that new media and the digital revolution has to expand the scope of social engagement, their power in constructing new identities, to challenge misinformation, and to inculcate new literacies. and to recognize that new media, digital revolution, can also be used beneficially as disruptors and to build a more inclusive world. So what can we then say new media can be used for? We can create a homogenizing global citizenship and national citizenship, which are rooted in recognizing valid and individual identities. New media can also help us, as somebody has said, in fact checking, and this is a critical element in the new citizenship, and what I call myth busting. The new world will emerge when there is a large enough presence of socially literate persons with flexible identities who are willing to challenge and bust myths. Last words, given the possibilities, multiplicity of sources, we face a challenge of trust and truth in our brave new digital age. The famous fake news, which most people have referred to here, is a very good example. And the disturbing realization from COVID and the part that talks about flattening the curve is that no sector is actually immune from the corrupting influence of fake news, be it political, economic, health, social. And that therefore what we need are people who are not only internet savvy, but who are also digitally literate and who are socially committed. Now, to conclude, identity and citizenship construction have undergone fundamental challenges. In the past, when we were small, construction was largely through stories of heroes and models of courage, and stories built and crafted around a certain idealism. Now it is more impersonal. Citizenship construction is more impersonal and yet more manipulative, splintered and splintering. And so that multiple identities now conflate and confuse the emergence of true citizenship. Who knows what it will be in the future? I'll leave the deciphering of that to crystal ball gazers, because old men like us are not good at that game. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. And we have had your presentation. Now we move on to another presentation from Professor Hayes Mobazera. I hope I've mentioned the name correctly. Please let us be conscious of the time. We have less than 20 minutes more. So we have less than 10 more minutes for this section to move on to the next section. Thank you very much.
Okay, I hope you can see me just briefly there.
Yes.
Mine is a fairly brief intervention, which I'll share in a second. Okay, there we go. So what I'm trying to talk to here is the notion of the digital divide, and as it plays out in questions of identity and also questions of citizenship. And the point really that I'm trying to drive at is that, can we get to a point where we can redefine the digital divide and talk about it from an African perspective? Because what we have in the majority of cases is the definition of the digital divide that is coming mostly from the global north perspective. So what I'm proposing here really is a conceptual way of reconceptualizing what we are referring to as the digital divide. Are there different ways of looking at the digital divide, as it were, from an African perspective, and what can we look at? And to try and do that, what I've done here is to explore the sort of the challenges and the impediments that are faced by journalists in Africa. Having looked at journalists in Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Uganda more specifically, to say what can we learn really from the way the mobile phone is appropriated in this particular context by these professionals. And my point of departure is that the mobile phone really in an African context is one of the most romanticized subjects in digital media scholarship. And that romanticization or the pervasive sort of celebratory tone about how the mobile phone is being used in an African context tends in many ways to overshadow the very fact that in trying to deploy, in trying to appropriate the mobile phone, there are several challenges that confront African citizens in their efforts to effectively use the technologies for their own specific purposes in everyday context. And those challenges, as I put it here, tends to speak to the notion of the digital divide. But what exactly do we understand by the notion of the digital divide? I mean, this is a topic or a subject that has been debated fairly widely in scholarship. And the first thing that comes to our mind, obviously, when we talk about the digital divide is that technicist approach, that digital divide is essentially about technologies, access to technology. If you present technologies in a particular context, then we have plugged the digital divide, as it were. So this is a highly contested and notion by several scholars. But one of the arguments that has emerged over time, obviously, is an acknowledgement of the fact that to understand the digital divide, we need to go beyond the technicist understanding, go beyond the, just simply understanding it as the lack of access to digital technologies, as it were. It should be understood in a more kind of critical perspective that goes beyond who has access and who doesn't have access to technology, as it were. So when we use the sort of multidimensional perspective of trying to understand what the digital divide is, within the context of journalism practice. And I'm looking at journalists here as both professionals, but also as citizens in a particular context. And really, although my focus is primarily, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Uganda, this can be stretched, I think, across many countries in Africa. So what are the main challenges that we can sort of define in this multi-dimensional, multi-perspective sort of way of conceptualizing the digital divide? What are the challenges that we can look at within the context of journalism? What I've tried to sort of generate here is this sort of multi-perspectival kind of model that is looking at the political, the technical, and the economic, as well as the social-cultural challenges that journalists face within an African context in trying to effectively appropriate and deploy the mobile phone. Now, at a political level, obviously, you'd have several factors around the questions of censorship, electronic surveillance, and so on and so forth, quite predominant within Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Uganda in some cases. But also the wider political context of fear in terms of using this technology. Who am I talking to at what particular point, and who is most likely to be listening? Am I not putting my sources in danger? So that intervenes and challenges the effective use of this particular gadget that journalists should be using in engaging and conversing with citizens. And that obviously leads to the question of self-censorship. And there is also the widely debated and widely known publicized question of internet blockages and mobile telecom shutdowns, which has been a big issue in Zimbabwe. And the promulgation of laws that tend to undermine questions of privacy and freedom of expressions. All these sort of intervene and have implications or impacts on the effective appropriation of the technology. And then obviously you've got the most obvious questions here, or issues around technology, which I refer to as technical challenges here. The aging telecoms infrastructure, particularly outside the big cities. You would also have the weak institutional structures and professional competencies within news organizations in some cases. Poor connectivity, that's the widely known sort of challenge and bandwidth. the regular power cuts that we have in Zimbabwe at the moment, where you have the country goes for hours on end, no electricity. That has implications on how these technologies are appropriated. But also there's the rural-urban connectivity divide. And if you look at the economic...
Prof, I think you need to round up.
Okay, if you look at the economic factors, you've got several other factors that intervene there. But my point really is that, of course, we understand that there are these questions of access that challenges that we have there. What are the localized ways that are emerging in trying to plug or to intervene, as it were? So you'd find that there are several approaches that are being used at a very local level, which are not understood outside the African context, as it were. Questions, around occasionally using, public phone booths, hiding caller identity. If you look at confronting the economic challenges, there's the question of sharing, the use of basic Chinese phones, the use of second-hand mobile phones. But what I'm particularly interested in is this particular bit, which is the social-cultural responses, which speaks to the single owner multiple user, which Nyamjo Francis talks about quite a lot. And then the question of people assisting each other, what I refer to as surrogate.
On your last minute, please.
Proximate literacy. I'm just winding up, yes. And then there's the question of beeping or the flashing culture, as it were. And then the multiple SIM ownership and all those other factors. So the point I'm making here is that when we pull all these localized interventions or localized forms of resistance or subversion or creativity in appropriating the mobile phone, can we then redefine the digital divide and talk about it in a completely different way that isn't simply about access to technology? Rather, we should possibly be looking at the digital divide in a holistic way that is defined not necessarily by technology, but looking at technology and these dialectical interchanges with the immediate and the wider social context. So these localized strategies used to circumnavigate these challenges not only demonstrate the extent to which technology has been tamed and domesticated, but also highlights the need to reimagine the digital divide as inherently linked to and acquiring new meanings in the heterogeneity and complexities of the social context in which technologies are appropriate.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much. You're welcome. We now move on to the last paper in this section to be presented by Professor Abigail Ogwezi Ndisika, former head of Department of Mass Communication at the University of Lagos. Please, Prof, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. I just turned on my video for people to see my face. I'm going to stop the video because of connectivity while I take my paper. Thank you. Well, I've been asked to look at Brave New World, Reshaping Identities and Citizenship. I will look at this, I'll make my intervention using 3 points in my outline: the concept of Brave New World, and I'll also look at how the Brave New World is reshaping identities and citizenship, highlighting what has changed and what needs to be changed, then based on that, make my submission. So in terms of conceptual clarification, it's important to look at the Brave New World. The Brave New World is actually traceable to a fiction, a science fiction written by Aldous Huxley between 1894 and 1963. And in that science fiction, there are 2 significant themes in that book. The 2 significant themes are enslavement and freedom. So in my opinion, from a historical perspective, the Brave New World and the contemporary Nigerian society can be seen as a lens through which we can look at democratic governance in Nigeria and the conditions in which citizens are enduring because of unfulfilled promises by politicians. The Brave New World, looking at Nigeria and democratic governance, tries to ridicule our duty bearers who make promises that they really can't fulfill, leaving our nation in dystopia where there is suffering, on accountability and injustice. So the question now is, how is this new brave world reshaping our identities and our citizenship? The brave new world is powered by technology. It's an utopian world, an enslavement in the sense that they promise you everything they don't give you, and only a few talk about a free society. So this brave new world, because it's powered by technology, now is to the advantage of Nigeria because of the new media. And so it's enabling us to express our identity and explore our country, and also as citizens, we're exploiting the power of the new world, the brave new world, against the traditional media in reshaping communication patterns. Now, looking at identities, ethnic groups now use the brave new world, use the new media to appropriate cultural elements that act as markers of their own identity, as well as distinguishing themselves from other groups. Looking at Nigeria, for instance, you have people who are constantly talking about one Nigeria, unity in diversity. Therefore, that we have is, of course, we are a diverse group, but we have a single identity. And so in the brave new world in which we live in Nigeria, the idea of single identity is rigged. It's rigged, hence you have people who have come out to say, or to challenge that particular identity that has been created. And that is why those things have been threatened because of our diversity. And because of that, the ethnic dimension of our country is deepening our diversities, and the quest for different groups for cultural recognition and right is challenging the notion of citizenship as conceptualized in the brave new world. And so you have citizens now who claim to be patriotic as well, but largely, many of them are self-centered and they call themselves patriots. And I put the patriots in quote because if you can't beat them, you join them. And they are largely using it to negotiate what they will enjoy by themselves. Having said that, it's also important to point out that the brave new world presents a lot of hope for a few people who are free to challenge the hegemony. And people are now leveraging on the brave new world to amplify the voices that are hitherto excluded. So if you look at our country, people now discuss national issues on social media. Hitherto, nobody would talk about that.
Hello, Professor Abigail.
You've lost her.
Professor Abigail. Hello.
I think we lost her.
Yes.
Seems like there's a breaking network transmission or something.
Oh, yes. Yes.
She's back. She should unmute as a microphone.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So it's networks. Let me quickly look at what really has changed. The brave new world now promotes freedom of expression, which we have actually utilized through citizens' engagement and citizen journalism. Citizens now can place their issues on the front burner of public discourse and attention, enabling them to exercise influence. This really has strengthened the office of the citizen in the country. It has also led to the push for improved accountability as people leverage on the new media, that's the right holders leverage on new media to engage and discuss what has been done by duty bearers, as well as highlight mistakes and gaps, which needs to be addressed, and the corrections are actually monitored over time. Again, it has also reduced the spiral of silence. In the brave new world, in opposition to mainstream media, alternative media presents opportunities for identities as it gives voices to dissent viewpoints, which usually are marginalized in society. The Brave New World has also enabled citizen conversation, like we said, leveraging on the new media. On the Brave New World, we easily bet social movements, and there's increased use of hashtags for people to push their concerns. Therefore, the Brave New World is also promoting social inclusion among citizens. Largely, it has brought to bear or to fulfillment the prophecy of Marshall McLuhan. We are all here talking to ourselves from different parts of the world. In terms of what needs to change, we should be more ethical in the use of the alternate media. That way we can reduce misinformation. We should also talk about policies that will enhance better access to new media and reduce the polarized world that we have where some people don't have access. We should also push for increased media literacy and as much as possible for people to be more digitally fluent. I'd like to summarize by saying that in looking at how the Brave New World is reshaping identities and citizenship, it's quite complex. And it's quite complex. However, the power of the new media has helped us to reshape our identities and citizens in political relations. And we're using it to flatten the old hierarchies and to create new and highly interactive arenas where people can engage their duty bearers. So I'd like to submit that the Brave New World represents a battlefield between both hegemony and resistant citizens who now leverage on alternate media to speak up. Thus, the new media has become a platform and a force for reshaping identities and actions as citizens.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Used it. Let me just conclude in 2 minutes. Thank you, Prof. And, largely, we are leveraging on it now, using technological advancements to have a more equitable society where voices could be heard and duty bearers ensure that they listen to the right holders. So essentially, it's promoting more the office of the citizens. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome, Professor Abigail. Thank you, our panelists and distinguished members. We have exceeded our session with about 6 minutes. I hope that will not affect the next session. So I hand over the session on to Mr. Macaulay, who will take on from there.
Thank you very much, Prof. Before Mr. Macaulay comes on, I'll just say a big thank you to all those who have spoken so far. Just to remind us that we can go to the chat room to respond to questions. Briefly, let me recognize Professor Chinyere Stella Okuna, a member of the Board of Trustees of ACSPN. Prof, you are most welcome. And also our keynote speaker for tomorrow, Professor Honora Uneli, who is a professor of mass communication, and His Royal Highness, the Malume of Igbaka. Prof, you're welcome. So I'll hand over to Mr. Macaulay Olushola of UNESCO for the second session of today's activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shido, and thank you everyone that's started this meeting with us since the 1 o'clock that we started. We're going to try as much as possible to make this section very brief. We have special features of 2 publications, one from UNESCO, and the title of this is Steering and Advanced, what I mean by Steering Artificial Intelligence and Advanced ICTs for Knowledge Society. The book actually analyzes the changes that have been advanced through the ICT by bringing the society to a limelight. There will be no other person that will do justice to this other than my colleague from Communication and Information Sector from HQ in Paris. That's Mr. Bernard Nepanel. He's going to give us just between this next 7 and 10 minutes, he's going to give us a presentation that surrounds this special publication of UNESCO. Over to you, Biano.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm loud and clear. Let me just share my screen so that it becomes a little easier for you to follow what I'm trying to is it visible to you?
Very well, but you can just enlarge it. Maybe press F5.
I'm just doing it now. Is that it? Great. Okay. All right. What I do is UNESCO has a global mandate also to create knowledge societies. And last year, there was 2 years ago, there was a big push for analyzing different stream of work that UNESCO does and trying to match that up with the digital revolution that was in fact taking place or unfolding around the world. And Secretary General of the United Nations had also called to see and requested or invited other peers from the United Nations system to examine different facets of development and link that up with artificial intelligence. So what we did was, given the fact that one of the work that we do is to create knowledge societies, we thought to utilize a framework that is already there with us, and we actually call it a Rome framework, that is a right, openness, access, and multi-stakeholder framework on internet universality. And we saw that how artificial intelligence as a general purpose technology will change the landscape of knowledge society when it becomes when it becomes properly integrated in the development process. So what we did was, the first that I was telling you about, okay, what universality principle it is all about, we in fact analyze the influence of internet or ICTs and human rights. We also look at okay, how will internet or ICT will essentially change the landscape of knowledge data market and opportunities. Look at also see that okay, what are different infrastructure and facilities that are there, and then how that fares with access. And also look at who are the major players who are involved in AI governance. And we also look at okay, maybe this, given the fact that AI has a very deeper social consequences, which some of the previous speakers have already said, we try to see that okay, what will be its implication on gender, and at the same time what is its implication on Africa, given the fact that these two, gender as well as in Africa, is UNESCO's principal priority. So for human rights, what we have done in this book, and I'll in fact show this book before you, we have in fact shipped a packet of book to my colleague Olusula, and I hope you will soon have this this book with you. At the end of this presentation, I've also shared the link that that book, and you can in fact download. It's available online for your. And we will, as much as we'd like you to download, at the same time we'd like you to go through the book and give us the feedback on how you felt, given the fact that we are doing a number of follow-up activities. So as I was saying, from the rights perspective, we looked at how artificial intelligence will somehow influence freedom of expression, or right to privacy, journalism and media development, and also the right to equality and participation in public life. Will it change, or will it somehow influence, and whether it will influence the better of humanity or for the worse of humanity? We all had that. So what we did was we not only analyzed this perspective, but at the same time, what we have done is, we have in fact provided certain options that, for example, in a member state, a country such as Nigeria can in fact utilize, or private sector for that matter, they can do it, or academia and some universities which have, and at the same time, what can civil society do, and what can media do, and what can international organizations such as UNESCO can do to somehow upset some of the negative consequences of how artificial intelligence is infringing on human rights, and how it can somehow maximize the benefit or the potentiality that AI can yield for the development processes. But openness, what we had done at that time is, we also analyzed, what are the principal barriers to openness? How is open data? If data is somehow in the process, most of the discussion today, kind of, focused on the technology per se, but technology doesn't move forward, without the data. So we have, in fact, already, started doing a few things on generating new data so that, new artificial intelligence, algorithm can be trained. So this is something that we have already started. But at the same time, we are very much we know that there are some certain risks, associated with openness in artificial intelligence, and what should be the role between, say, the government as well as private players, when these things become obvious. So again, we have provided, similar sort of, say, options, and these options are almost, like very much in low-hanging fruit, that different, actors can, in fact, apply. We also looked at, okay, what the access has to do with. We can talk about artificial intelligence, but what about what is the state of access to research on artificial intelligence? How does this access of knowledge, education, and human resources are there? We can talk about developing algorithm, but where are the people who can actually do it? The other thing, we also looked at, the access to data. There are databases, there are data lakes, which are being created, but these databases are A, incomplete, B, these are out of reach of those people who actually crunch or write codes. And at the same time, we also looked at, okay, a GPU server, if you buy a very sophisticated GPU server to run AI algorithm, that costs a lot of money. Many of the researchers, and at the same time, universities do not have access to such infrastructure and platform, to do it. So we thought that, it's not only having access to AI technology is important, but at the same time, it is extremely important for them to also utilize, or have a facility to run these applications. We also looked at multi-stakeholder approach to AI governance, because it's the new field that is, and then we identified several roles that government, private sector, technical community, civil society, academia, media, and international organization can play in this overall field. One of the things that we are advocating is there needs to be an inclusive framework to be found. It needs to be diverse, it needs to be collaborative, and so forth. These are very discussed in this book that we are launching today, and we hope that out of the book, one thing has already happened. We have in fact, undertaken a detailed survey of capacity building need. First, we published this book, and after that, we undertook a detailed capacity building survey of Africa. 32 member states had responded to it, and that report is nearing completion. This was done by Africans. This is, in fact, going to be for Africa. So this report will somehow, open the doorway to address, okay, if states, role of developing multi-state framework is required, what will they what should they do? So all kind of, like avenues for future, say, utilization of AI technology for development purposes is given there. So the last thing that we had analyzed in this book was, how AI and gender will play, and what kind of, what kind of context is there to link, AI with Africa. I already said that, capacity building, we thought, was the main thing. There are several things are there, from understanding from, why, okay, there are all digital assistants, like have female voices and so forth. So we not only had done it, but at the same time, we had, in fact, seen that, okay, if there are many languages in Africa which are minority language or low resources languages, what can artificial intelligence do to bring those languages and make it conversant, as far as digital say communication quote is concerned. So what we are doing is, we have already launched a language challenge, where we are in fact, trying to populate, more say words or more, sort of, like a data on an African language, so that some of these, low resources language can also be utilized for, say, medical, to providing medical services, or providing, all other types of services. If someone wants to come in development, like people will come to understand, a society or something like that, how can they very quickly learn the language and so forth? So this work has already started, but at the same time, as I have said before, we have taken due course of, data risk, that exists there. And this book provides, several things. So I, in fact, offer this book to you, and I hope that, you'll take a very good use of it. And at the end, what I will do is, this is the link of that book. I will, as soon as, my presentation is over, I will copy this link and put it in the chat box that, you can download it and then start to read. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I thought I mute my speaker. The second book that's been published by ACSPN is what we call the Media Freedom, National Interest and Governance. This is the 5th series of their books. The first 4 series is, number 1 is Taking Stock, Nigerian Media and National Challenges. The second one was the Digital Media, New Order. The third one was Media Reflection on Governance in Nigeria. And the fourth one is Fake News and Hate Speech, Narrative of Political Instability. Like I said, the 5th one is Media Freedom, National Interest and Governance. And there's no other person that will be doing justice to the review of the book other than Professor Idowu Shobowale. He's the chairman of the Board of Trustees of ACSPN, and he's going to be doing this in the next 5 to 7 minutes. Over to you, Professor Adeboye. Is Prof in the house, please?
Hello.
Yeah, Prof, over to you, please.
Yeah, I think maybe there was a mixture when we started. Professor Wale came up during the first, when we were doing the opening remarks, and he actually presented the book then. Okay. So we just thought that he has, fulfilled his responsibility during that period. So I don't know, maybe Professor Owens can clarify what the situation is.
Professor Owen, any clarification? Just move ahead.
Thank you very much. I think we can move ahead. The book has been presented, and I guess Michael may decide, or Pressy may decide to project the cover as we move to the concluding session for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I'm just going to mention to you that ACSPN is going to publish a book on artificial intelligence soon, and requests will be made to the public to submit their papers. If you wish you are interested in this, we will encourage you to look forward for this request and do make your your paper available to ACSPN. And this is in collaboration with UNESCO Regional Office in Abuja. Over to you, Dr. Shedo.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Macaulay. Again, thank you to Mr. Nupen, the program specialist CI in UNESCO, for your presentation on the book around artificial intelligence. We've gradually come to the end of today's presentation. What we have left is the closing remarks, and that will be given by Mr. Idowu Lateef Olagunju, Secretary General, UNESCO National Commission in Nigeria.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Everyone. Morning, good evening. It's been a very long day and a very, very wonderful conference. Day one. So it's a special privilege to...
Sorry, could you come a little closer to your microphone so we can hear you clearly? Thank you very much.
Okay. It's been a very long day. How about now? Can you hear me now clearly?
You still need to come closer, sir.
Still a bit faint.
Hello? How about now?
You need to come closer, sir. Come closer to the microphone.
We can hear you. Still closer. I've come closer. What about now, Mr. Pressy?
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Fair.
It's manageable.
It's a little fair now.
Okay, I said it's been a long day and it's a very, very wonderful conference, the day one. So I am privileged to give this closing remark. And I will say that the program has been very interesting. I want to appreciate the organizers. And I want to say quite well that the program will go a long way in helping us to address the problem of misinformation, especially the one that have been brought to the fore during the pandemic that just came around. So I want to appreciate ACSPN and IFAP for organizing this wonderful conference. And I would also like to appreciate the erudite professors and the erudite presenters. I want to say that we are doing a good service to humanity. And I believe at the end, we will all rejoice when all these problems are being addressed. So I want to appreciate all the resource persons. And I will say that tomorrow will be another day, which we expect will be of very good results. And at the end, the populace will be well enlightened about the dangers of misinformation. Thank you for everything. We appreciate you all. Thank you and thank you. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olagunju. Again, let me, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, the Advisory Board, and the Executive of ACSPN, thank all the participants, the resource persons, for staying with us this long. As Mr. Olagunju noted, it's been a very long day, and we're happy to still have over 120 participants still engaged in the process. The program continues tomorrow at the same time, and we look forward to your active participation. We encourage people to fill in the surveys that are posted on that appear on our screens, but also for the resource persons to go to the Q&A session to respond to questions directly. I'll hand over to Professor Nosa, who heads the Secretariat of ACSPN, for any last-minute comments and perhaps closing rules or engagement for tomorrow. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Actually, I wasn't supposed to come in, but I guess this is democracy, so Chido wants to democratize the space. I want to thank everyone, and we look forward to an even more engaging session tomorrow. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Well done.
Bye-bye.
Great meeting.
Good one. Thank you. Bye-bye.